Thank you for listening to the Kyle and Tim podcast, where we have authentic conversations that help cultivate a better understanding of ourselves, our guests, and the world we live in. This podcast is about our guests, getting to know them, their backgrounds, experiences, thoughts, and ideas. We really appreciate you listening. Before we introduce our next guest, we'd like to introduce a few of our sponsors that help make this podcast possible.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Mountain Mule Transportation, located here in Bozeman, Montana. Mountain Mule is a private SUV and truck service, offering chauffeur services in all of southwest Montana. Whether it's your next skiing, hunting, or fishing trip, early morning or late night trips to and from Bozeman Airport, as well as weddings and private parties. No matter the occasion, Mountain Mule will get you there safely and on time. To learn more, visit mountain-mule.com and book today.
Welcome to the Tim and Kyle podcast. This is Bob Lowry. Apparently, we're going to talk about things that I've intersected with in my life to then put it down to who I've become because of that. So when you hear this, it's just stuff that I've had to overcome that created who I am today. And I just am who I am today because of the things that I intersected with. So you're going to talk about mountain climbing, being punched in the face in martial arts and thrown to the ground, having to overcome fear to play on the court of courage, and learning about your brain and what it can and can't do. So let's take a journey into the Kyle and Tim podcast world.
It's a great intro.
That's
Thanks,
awesome.
Bob.
Perfect. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I just have my 100-year-old, soon to be 100-year-old mother and my wife.
Oh, really?
And
There you
that's
go.
it.
That's cool. Mom's almost 100.
Yeah, she'll be 100 in May, and
That's so cool.
we're starting to organize things.
Sure.
Still in independent living. Dad died at 62. So
She's been riding solo for a while.
yeah, and on about $100,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, some Social Security. Yeah, so it's one of those things where she's born 1925. It's like I can handle myself.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
want
yeah.
my kids to be bothered,
Uh-huh.
and that's been her whole. And so just keeps rolling.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said that you can live for another 40 years on $100,000.
Yeah, I mean, she had some other monies on the side, but then we're hopeful that the house that we had lived in, and it's $100,000 what the Zillow amount was, but the place next to it had sold, and they put a Family Dollar in. So people saw O'Reilly said, "We want to put a auto parts place." So they offered $400,000, and she needed $500,000 to be into this senior care place. And that's exactly what she ended up having. And she was able to get into the place that she was volunteering until she was mid-80s.
Okay.
So it's like it was her dream.
Cool.
When did Carol say her father was born?
1919.
Yeah, I just assumed that he wasn't still alive, but she didn't say. I think she
Right,
probably
yeah.
would have said if he was over 100 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Your mother will be 100 this year.
May 3rd,
Wow,
rock and roll.
very cool. Where's she living?
Is she going skydiving on her birthday or something?
Yeah, buddy, you say that. She's like, it's snowing out. I don't think I'm going for a run this morning. I'm like, okay. Sounds awesome, Mom. So,
That's cool.
yeah.
Is she here?
No, Pittsburg.
Okay,
That's where I grew up.
okay. Yeah, let's start there. What was Pittsburgh like?
Pittsburgh was like Montana, right? So I always say this. I said, well, if you see someone digging a ditch, you grab a 6-pack and you come out with a shovel. And, that's because Pittsburgh was all blue collar. I was born in 66. So in the 70s, the Steelers were big. Pirates were big. It was the center of the universe, the U.S.
Sure.
And then, steel workers get in at 7, they work till whenever, and then they go to the bar, right? That's what it was.
That's the culture.
Totally the culture. And then everyone, you support each other as a community. And the interesting thing, you'll hear language, Pittsburghese, Yins guys, rubber band, all these things. I got a shirt that says all this. And that's because all the cultures showed up there. Because from Europe, that's where steel mills, you came to work. So you have Polish Hill, you have Little Italy. You wouldn't realize how diverse it is. Even my mom's father was Russian Orthodox. I have a Bible that's in Russian, and he used to do some because they came from Czechoslovakia and all that stuff. So it was just a really diverse town at the end of it, and that made stuff.
Yep.
So everybody cared for everybody, and everybody trusted everybody, and there was respect was the mantra.
Yeah, that sounds very much like Montana.
Yeah.
At least the way I see it. Some
Yeah.
people see it different, but yeah, hardworking values and community values are big here, I'd say, in my opinion, and that sounds very similar.
Yeah, it's changed now. I mean, I was on committees out there in my banking role because the steel mills had shut down. Because welcome to the world of lower cost kind of economics. So all those things shut down.
You mean sending stuff across the world to be built?
China started making steel, right? And they just were dumping steel, as you've heard those phrases. And so steel mills went out of business because you had a bunch of hard workers that got paid a good amount of money, but they were in life-threatening situations. A lot of people died, so it's hard work. And so that devolved. And you take this 80,000 acre space, and it's blighted because steel has some off-gassing and problems, right? You can't just start plant a tree there. It's not going to work. So you end up having to change the dynamic. So CMU's there, which is you created the ATM. People don't know things like that, and they have this science lab, like here in Montana
CMU,
State, Carnegie Mellon University.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they have the Robotics Institute, and it's super secret. You got to sign to go in. As a banker, I'd go and visit. And so they have a lot of technology. So then Google moved in, all these things. So now it's a tech place, and it's outdoors. It's in these Allegheny Mountains, so it's beautiful. So it's had to rebrand itself. So it's a little different now. You don't have as much people making stuff.
Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah, in a sense, it sounds like Butte, like it was a big city that was known for something, and then it's probably maybe it's doing better economically now than Butte is now. I'm not sure how they.
Yeah, we a lot of community people got ahead of it and started inviting people. We were trying to get a light rail in. We were just campaigning for all these things to try to make the city, a different place. But now it's that blighted, space of 80,000 acres now has apartments on it, restaurant. It's a walking city now.
They tore down the steel mill.
Yeah.
And then they redeveloped it.
Remediated it. Yeah. The university, which is always a driver of a lot of business, put their sports, University of Pittsburg put their practice field down there, et cetera, et cetera. And so now it's just a place to go. And old buddy of mine started an outdoor nonprofit. We'd go take people outdoors. I've been a big outdoor guy. I used to teach people rock climbing and camping skills and outdoor skills. And so it got rated as one of the top outdoor cities because we created all this, and they opened up the waterways because the waterways were shut down because that's where the coal would come. And the steel mills had rights to the waters. So then now all of a sudden it's a water sports. You have biking around the rivers. There's 3 rivers that come together. Everyone lives, more and more people living in town. So it's changed. Butte can go through that, but they've got to build the infrastructure and change it and have a draw. So now there's a draw of technology, outdoor living, communities.
So they just kind of stayed ahead of it in a sense before it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like? Do you have siblings? What was it like growing up there?
Brother and a sister. My brother was 6 years older than me. My sister's 3 years older. We lived out it's farmland in PA. So when they had bought the land back in 1950, whatever, late 50s, it was just old farms. And so there was nothing there. And I grew up on a state road at the end of the road kind of thing, last house. And so it was outside all the time. It was on an acre, and my dad had a business agriculture degree before he went in the Army. Then he came back out and got an electrical engineering degree. So we grew our own veggies, lived off our stuff in our backyard, and bought a half a cow. And that was what I knew. And I went to school. It's interesting. All my friends were different. All my friends I had a bunch of black friends, and a couple of people straight off the boat from Italy lived 2 doors down, right? He said his dad knows, I know Chin Elbow come to America, and he has 13 kids. So I was hanging out with a bunch of 2 boys and 11 girls, right, in this one house. It was crazy. It was just a fun time growing up. So then I went to high school. All of a sudden I see all these other people that look like me. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't know where I lived. And it was just that dynamic that I had. It was more diverse than I, had ever imagined. So as I graduated in high school with 900 people in high school. So I sat next to someone I didn't know. So it was a little tougher, and they were putting in metal detectors my last couple of years. And that was back in the 80s. So things were when you have density, things were getting a little bit more ramped up and things just got a little different. But it was, again, community and fine. But I lived since I was the youngest and I wasn't near anybody, it was a lot of by myself stuff. I'd sit outside and meditate. I started reading meditation books when I was in my 16 or so, and just sat there in the backyard, meditated, sleep outside with a couple of poles in the ground and, a sheet over it, and just hung out outside all the time. That's what I did.
Okay. So let's dive into that. Wow, man, you'd be a pretty early adopter. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this, but somewhat of an outsider within your generation to be like, hey, adopting meditation that early.
Absolutely. I was very much an outsider that wanted to be an insider, right? The conflict of, could I go have friends? But no, I just sit and stare at a tree, kind of thing, right?
Okay, well, I want to have friends, but leave me alone. I'm going to go stare at this tree.
The dichotomy was a bit of a challenge. So I had to figure that out. And I think a lot of that stemmed from back then, the Chinese movies started to come out. So you'd see, this is like Bruce Lee era kind of thing. And I'd watch these martial arts films. And that's, you had 3 channels. Back then, it sounds like it's so deplorable. I only had 3 channels. It's a tough life. Not really, but that's all I knew. So I'm sitting there watching these, and so I'm like, I like this fighting stuff. I like it. Wait, why are they so? And then the philosophic people, and David Carradine, Kung Fu: The Legend was on back then. So I'd watch David Carradine being like really mellow. It's okay. I'm just not going to touch you, and you're going to fall. I'm like, well, I'm interested in this. Yeah. And so I just started delving into it. And I remember standing at a bookstore and was talking to some, because I'm okay to just walk up to someone, hey, what's up with that hat? I'm okay with doing that. So I walk up and I say, hey, look, I want to understand this Zen thing. What's going on here? Read this. Zen Mind, Beginner Mind, D.T. Suzuki was the greatest book. I'm like, okay. So I'm starting to read this thing. I had no idea what I was reading, but I'm just going through, and I peeled out a couple things and just said, listen to your breath. I'm like, oh, let me try that. And then I noticed calming down, because if you go back to the school, right, I go to a high school where people wanted to fight you every 2 minutes. I needed to come down every day and just go, okay, everything's cool. It's okay. Don't have so much stress. And so there was I discovered a balance that was needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Especially to be able to do that at such a young age and kind of teach yourself that, super valuable.
Yeah, the other part of that would be the why, right? So why? My mom had me at 41, so she wasn't aware. And at that time, you think things are accelerating now. Well, they were accelerating back then, but in the 80s, it was like any acceleration, it's some kind of mathematical algorithm that would push it faster. So my mom and dad didn't really know what I was going through, and I couldn't come say, hey, look, I got this stress at school, because they would like, just get over it. That was
like,
it.
Yeah, like shut up.
Yeah, my dad never talked, and he spent years, and he was, like I said, he was in the Army for a while, in tank division before Korean War time, and he didn't have to deploy. He was just about to get shipped out, but he was just a quiet guy that fixed computers and didn't talk to anybody. So yet I have my mom, who was she grew up with, her brother was injured at birth, and he'd been in the hospital since 10, died when he was 50 something. So all she had to be is a caregiver. So she didn't know how to interact with people as well. So both my parents were quiet and non-interactive. So I had to figure it out. And so, yes, at 16, I said, I remember this well, I'm standing in the kitchen. I said, well, you're Bill and Dorothy now. You're my friends. Because I couldn't, there was no parenting as you would, read a book today about what parenting and heavy interaction would be. So I just became extremely independent, which can also make you completely isolated. Sure. And then I'd be reading a lot, and I'd meet my friends and people, and they wouldn't have anything to contribute to my thinking. So I was like, wow, I feel really alone.
Because they're not reading Zen books.
No.
At 16.
So I just went deeper in it. I'm like, well, I'm just going to figure this out.
Yeah.
Cool,
man.
Yeah, you said you had no issue walking up to anyone and asking them, hey, what does this mean? Do you have any idea where that came from? Or is that like a personality trait? Or
that's something I said to myself. I said, and it's going to sound weird, but not weird, is I want to talk to everybody on the planet, because then I'll learn something. And I said that to myself at a young age too. Now you can go and say, well, it's impossible. But if you don't make it big, you're never going to do it. I'm going to talk to 20 people today. Well, I'm done. Whatever. I can just go to the mall and be done.
And you could be done in like 20 minutes.
So I kept my mindset of saying, I will never know. So keep asking. So to this day, I keep asking. And my wife goes to me and says, how can you just say that to somebody? I say the craziest things. I was like, dude, that black jacket's got quilts on it. Why'd you choose quilts? You'd be like, well, because I like it. Oh, okay. So what made you like it? I'd go do that. Well, my grandmother quilted stuff for me and I love it. Right? I'm like, cool. So you like your grandmother? I'd just keep doing this. Then I'd say, and people would look at me and go, and they literally, I think all humans want people to know stuff about them because they have a bit of sense of pride. So when I talk to them, I get to them and they sit there and go, wow, yeah. They walk away and go, he's really nice. I'm like, well, I just talked about them.
Yeah, you just asked them about it.
Because I genuinely care.
Yeah, and you might find something out really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have. And it just, I couldn't even give a list of things, but every time I walk away, I'm like, oh. And then it just reprograms my brain. It like adds another layer somewhere.
Yeah, what a great mantra or mindset to have to talk to people.
It's good, but it's also exhausting. So at the end of the day, sometimes I went through this executive training because I was in charge of a bunch of people and stuff. And they put me through this thing. And the one guy said to me, some deep psychologist, I had to answer 250 questions, had to have multiple interviews and all this stuff to, except there was no probing. So that was cool. And then I'm sitting there and he goes, at the end of the day, are you really tired? I go, well, yeah, kind of. I don't know. Yeah. He's like, because you're so emotionally connected with everybody, you just put it all out there all the time. And I'm like, I process that. I'm like, yeah, I do. But I won't change it. But it's like, I do it on absolutely everything. So, and that's why I get involved in so many things too. Because my brain keeps saying, you need more. Every day it says, you need more. I need more. I need more.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if it's a disease or that sounds like the human, like that's how humans are. They want to achieve more and do more. And whether people act on it or find good outlets for it is to be determined.
I mean, I guess like the opposite of that is not any good either, right? So like, let's just say that could be a flaw, right? Where you're like, you're giving too much energy to all these things, and maybe, I don't know, maybe that's taking a toll on you. Well, being bored is real shitty too.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of problems with boredom.
Yeah. Well, how do people, fill that gap these days, right?
Yeah, with their phone.
Yeah. So then they're trapped and drawn in, and then then they become stagnant.
Yeah.
And okay, but that's why I think today you can really succeed because other people are just stagnant. They're all like just standing there waiting to get on some boat somewhere, and you're just going around doing stuff.
Mm-hmm. There's a quote an idle mind is a devil's workshop.
Yeah.
Which, I know the feeling. If you just, the last thing I need is way too much time to think about things and have nothing going on.
Yeah. Then going back to the Zen part, well, but maybe you do need to reflect on some things. But what I've learned, just personal experience, you do your own thing, right? Is I go ahead and absorb that. And one of the Zen things are, it's like, let it come in, ruminate on it for a minute, then let it go out, right? So I believe my view is you need to sit there and go, okay, what is going on with that? And just massage it a little bit and see and determine for yourself. I think it's X. Then you can close that door that doesn't like jump up in the middle of some relationship situation. You're talking to your significant others and you're all freaked out and you don't know why. It's because you didn't deal with that. So I think I've trained my mind from all that to let things come in, deal with them, go. Then go on to the next thing and then not let things sit idle because things can flow in. And you'd be amazed, with all these wearables now. Take the time if you have one and see your in and out, and up and down in stress. That's taught me a lot about, boy, you've got to really deal with things, and then you got to let them go. You got to deal. That's okay. Deal with things, let them go.
Let's dive in on that topic because it's interesting. I don't have wearables. Kind of afraid of them, quite frankly, and
you should be.
So, how long have you been doing?
Bob's vehicle wears him. It's a rolling wearable.
It is.
How long have you been doing these wearables, and what have they taught you, and what kind of awareness have they given you, and positives, negatives, whatever?
Great list of questions there. Only about a year, because I started, well, I've been extremely active and have done really hard things. So I've always had to train hard and be fit and all that stuff. And, being fit, you look in the mirror and go, oh, I'm fit. That's not true. So I was like, you know what? I need to get a wearable. And so I know that I can, run further, faster. Okay. That's a method, right?
Yeah.
So then I put this wearable on about a year ago because we were doing the Ret here. You guys know what those runs are.
Yeah.
I did a 20K, I guess 2 years ago. And I'm like, I'm just going to do it. I need something to do, something to achieve. And so I could do that. And then my wife's like, we signed up for the 28K. And she goes, well, we need to track this better. I'm like, absolutely right. So we started wearing it. And it takes a little bit of a while to get some baseline data and all that stuff. And it has your sleep and all those things. And I said, let's not get too obsessed about it. Let's use it as a kind of a guide. Today we're really stressed about it. I'll tell you about that. But because my sleep was off, that's why I'm a little like, oh, I don't know why is that. Okay, I know why. But it taught me to understand what my body's doing when. So it taught me to understand if I exert leg day, big leg day, I feel really good the next day. I sleep deeper because it's really just working out. And if I don't do a leg day, I don't sleep as hard. It's like the upper body, and it's just, it's different. And then let me add, some more aerobic threshold here, and let's try an anaerobic one. So doing all those things to dial it in, try not to be too obsessive to make it perfect every night. And then I said, okay, I barely drink at all anymore. Used to drink a lot. I was a cook. That just sums it up. You drank all the time. That's why I had to get out of that business. But if I have one drink, my sleep score goes from an 80 down to 60. I'm like, crap, no wonder I feel like crap. And I started trying to play with that to see if there's a balance I can do. So now you get to the obsessive thing. We slept pretty good last night, except my back was killing me. So I was a little bit off. And yeah, my sleep score is low. My wife's like, I feel pretty good. She goes, my sleep score is terrible. I'm like, but how do you feel? Like, can you do stuff? Mm-hmm. And so I think we all get caught up in data because it's fun. And then you analyze it and you go with it.
So I haven't done that. I've very minimally used sleep trackers, but that was my concern, is how much of it is psychosomatic, where I feel great, but I'm like, shit, I slept terrible.
Yeah.
So my thought was if I'm going to do a sleep tracker in the future, because I've been thinking about it for a while, I'm not going to check it till the following night.
Wow, that's a good idea.
So like you're going to wait 24 hours.
Yeah, till I go to bed. Say, because if I checked it first thing in the morning, then all day said I didn't sleep well, I'd carry that.
You're gonna check it 12 hours later.
Yeah, but I just don't want to carry that in my mind for the day, because I wonder how much I'll kind of will my demeanor for the day based on my. But maybe if I check it that night, I'll say, well, looks like I didn't sleep as well last night, which is funny because I felt great all day. But that could have been a result of, and I haven't implemented this. This is just my thought for.
But that's a great thought. And then what I do is if it's off, I go, what am I going to do about it? So the other side of that is I attack it.
Yeah.
But that's my nature. It's like, I'm going to win. I don't like to lose. And I don't care what you say. I'm going to kick your ass. I'm going to do this. So there's some of that. And yeah, I get a little mad, but I'm still using it as data to figure it out. And yeah, you're right. Every now and then I just don't wear it. And I go, well, how do I feel? And now it's bothering me. Like, I don't know. What did I do wrong? What did I do that day? And I don't want to build my life into a robotic thing that I'm going to do this to come up and be perfect every day, because it's okay, because that would just blow my mind out of the water.
Yeah. That's the exact reason why I've been afraid of it, is that I'm afraid to like lose the like intuitive side of things, and like, oh, well, the data on my watch says this, and so it must be that. Well, I slept great last night, so who cares? It's like a balance of both, right? I think that's probably the sweet spot. It is. Hey, I gained this information. It's probably mostly accurate, but there's other information that's not being tracked and is untrackable, but I can pay attention to it, right? So it is trackable in a way, or it's understandable, but it's
what's some untrackable things? That's curious.
I guess like things that are the intangibles, right? Or intangibles is like
relationships.
Yeah.
Like the amount of love you have in your life, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. If you're feeling depressed.
There's something like, I guess you can, it's interesting. Like you can track your stress in a way I would imagine. But like, I would be curious about how these apps, now we're going way into a deep, dark hole here, but I would be curious about how these apps actually track stress. Like, what is the definition of stress for the technology? Because I could be sprinting and that is stress, right? I could also just lose $500,000 and that can be stress, but I'm not physically, my body isn't, I'm not sprinting. Right. So,
but that's, sorry, can I?
Yeah.
Correct. Right. And so I could tell you, we have a cold tub. I get in my cold tub, that thing spikes.
That thing's you're stressed out.
It's just the release of the hormones. And because I've read a stack of books as high as your table on all this stuff. I just love this stuff. And it's just your body going thump, 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 thump. Hey, wait, what's going on? And everything just pushes out. And then your heart rate's up.
Yeah.
And your levels are up. And now, is that a bad thing? Well, just like anything, if you keep taking your car and you jam the accelerator down, you're stressing it out. It's going to die earlier, period. So what I do is I checked it out at work the other day. I'm like, I was having a thing. I sat and meditated and just sat there and breathed for a little bit. Got it down. Okay, great. Did my next thing. Sat and breathed for a little bit. I got a little timer. I put my timer. I'm going to just do this task. So I'm in control. And I looked at my watch. Usually it's like a declining thing, but it was steady. It stayed even. I'm like, well, this is great. If I do this, I can do more in a day because I'm not burnt out. Because I kept seeing it. Like my wife and I were like, oh, we're to 7. Yeah, we just had a recent loss. Her mom passed, and like you could just watch it going, oh, you got up about 30 points, and boom, crashed. And that's because of her stress load. So if you can go back to meditating throughout it, so that's the wearable part. Like, oh crap, my thing's off the chart. Calm down, dude. And I think there's value to that.
Yeah.
But again, that's the other anxiety is looking at it going, oh no, I'm going up. You just anxiety it again. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's both.
It's back to meditating.
It's both.
But it's back to just controlling what's going on in your body.
Yeah.
Which company are you working for? Because you just sold me on them.
Well, I just used the Garmin one now because they have all kind of levels. You can be an entry level versus the upper levels, and I didn't go all the way up. But I always say buy something in the middle. Don't go way on either way because you'll lose out. But you and it's just a good functionality. Yeah,
it's funny. So there's big wave surfer Laird Hamilton. You familiar with him? So I think he's 60 now. He's 60, and he on his 60th birthday he rode a 60-foot wave. Nice. So kind of he's a cool dude and super into health and fitness and well-being. And he was on a podcast saying that he doesn't have any trackables, doesn't track any of this stuff. And it's because the question was like, hey, how do you feel, about getting older? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, right. And they're like, well, you can't do, you probably can't do as much as you did 10 years ago. And he's like, I don't know if I can. I just work really hard all day, every day. And I feel good. So I keep doing that. And so I think there's room for both. And you're inspiring me to probably get a wearable and test it out.
Well, you opened that door, so I'm walking in. So I'm 58. And Tim's got to know me a little bit. So when I grew up, I just was constantly active. And a buddy of mine was going in the Marines. I was constantly weight training. I'd ride my bike down to there and all that stuff. And then I started, when I was even as a kid, I took this rope and put it up on the little railing, and I'm acting like I'm climbing mountains, right? So I've climbed mountains 25 years of my life, been all over the world, really hard mountains. And I've done all these things, but I said, by the time I'm 50, I'm moving west, right? So I'm like, everything culminated. Like I've had investment properties, had this, had that, traveled there. Because when my dad died, he didn't go anywhere because he couldn't afford to. And one place he wanted to go was Hawaii. He even said that to my mom. She goes, oh no, you're not well. He's dying. So I'm like, let's try to figure this out. Right. But I just couldn't interfere. So when he died, and I said, I'm just going to freaking do everything.
Yeah.
So that's when I was 24. I bought an investment property, started doing all these things, sold that one, 28, another one. So then I got, I had a line of credit on it too. I'm like traveling the world. So just everywhere, crushing it. Been on 17 mountains all over the world. Met my wife climbing Mount Everest in 08. So been on that twice and all this stuff. So just pushing through stuff. I hit 50, moved west, got this job, started doing stuff. I had a martial arts studio in DC, and I opened up another one in Colorado. I'm like going, okay, it all hit me like a wave. I'm like, I did my goal. Now what? I got lazy. I gained 20 pounds. I was still doing and training, doing stuff, riding a little bit. Like everything just fell off, and I had no clue why.
At 50.
At 50.
Okay.
Everything just kind of like, I'm like, okay, now I'm going to open this other studio, run these businesses, sold a lot of my property. I'm going to focus on this. Yay. Right. I made it. Yay. And I had the house, had the cabin. I did what I was supposed to. I always said I have to have X amount of money, to be okay. And I'm like, yeah, good. Got that all put away. And then I deteriorated. Then sorry if I don't want to drift too much. So
no, this is awesome.
Jerk the chain.
Awesome.
So then I had my colonoscopy because my dad died of colon cancer. So I had my colonoscopy. So, you're precancerous. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. So I was living in Colorado. I was living in downtown DC for 13 years. You want to talk stress? I was definitely 20 pounds heavier. I mean, my blood pressure was I just wanted to fight all the time. And
don't get me started on DC.
Yeah, no, I will. That's interesting. We're going to put a bookmark there coming back. But I lived in downtown DC, worked a block off in the White House, and I was a banker there. I'm still a banker now. But I'd come out of my house at 5 a.m. There's the coroner and cops, and I go, "What's up, man?" He goes, "Dead guy around the corner." I'm like, "All right, whatever." You just go through this life when people are constantly coming at you. So my level's through the roof, and I'm teaching martial arts across the street. I'm just walking across the street with my sword because I also teach sword and other things. And I'm just like, I don't care. I'm living in this town. I'm going to just rule this community. Because I don't want to walk in fear, and I don't want my wife to walk in fear. So I just had this, in the police state, it's green, yellow, red, black. Green is everything's fine. Yellow is like, pay attention. Red's like, I'm on. Black's, I'm going to fight for my life. Right. So you're always in the red zone. So you're talking about stress. If I was wearing a wearable then, that thing was skyrocket. Like, I wake up going game time every day. So
just fucking dumping cortisol.
And then I would, train and throw people all day and just fight a lot. And I noticed that. I noticed that after I left. I'm like, holy shit, maybe I shouldn't be like that all the time. So anyways, now I'm going to this thing and getting this thing. He says, you're precancerous. I'm like, okay, not cool. I just said, that's it. I'm done. I was my job in DC. I was getting on a plane, getting up at 3 a.m., flying somewhere, dealing with my 15 employees throughout 5 states, coming back, teaching all night. I'm just like, it's crazy. I just let it all go. I said, we're moving to Montana because I was on this board for wildlife and I came up here to visit, sent some pictures to my wife. She goes, you want to move? I said, okay. Chucked it all, threw it all out, showed up, right? COVID hits. So I got a 10 on top of my FJ, just disappeared. It was like, everyone's all freaked out. I still had my studio in DC running. Closed my one in Colorado. I was just starting to make money and it was really stable and it was good. I had like 100 students total and everything was fine. But I had to deal with this because if I'm dead, nothing else matters. Right. And my wife did all this stuff. And so I got here and I said, I got to figure this out. And so I started reading a bunch like I always do. You go to the knowledge and then I started carnivore. Did all this, and now I've lost a shirt size just by eating differently. A shirt size. Think about that. If you just all of a sudden lost a shirt size in a couple months, you'd be like, "What's wrong with me?" Right? It's like I probably have a problem.
Yeah, like if you lost whatever it is, but it's a lot.
XL to a large.
If you lost 10%, whatever,
that was all inflammation. That was poison, toxins, all this stuff. And then my wife's like, "You can't do this. Oh, this meat's going to kill you. It's not good." I'm like, I'm doing it. I don't care.
Just give it a try.
Here's these. Yeah. Give it. It's funny. It's crazy. Like you read today, we own our health now. A lot more people do. You trusted the docs. Docs gave you things because they were told that made sense and they had data. Right. Anyways, I do this. And then I go get my colonoscopy 3 years after my last one. I roll in, do my thing. I remember, you're on drugs a little bit, walking up. The doc goes, "All right, see you in 5 years." My wife goes, "What are you talking about? He's had this." He goes, "Oh no, that's the healthiest colon I've seen in the 50s. That was 50.
And how long were you doing carnivore?
About a year.
Yeah, so it was probably carnivore and other hormones that weren't or were being released.
Yeah, I think from what I've read and understood, yes, hormones is a lot to it. I couldn't speak to that science because it's too complicated for me. But all I know is other things weren't attacking my system, activating bad stuff. That's the takeaway. And I did fasting for a while too, like a 72-hour fast. And my wife did it with me. Just so proud of, being with a woman who just wants to do these things with you. And then, now I just feel absolutely amazing. So I tell you all that to say, I shut down for a while because I made the goals that I was supposed to make, right? That I did everything that was in my head. Now to your friend who's 60, I flipped the switch. I mean, I'm out there. Yeah, I would do 20K. What the hell? And just, running, pushing, and my wife and her back in the gym. I'm back in the squat rack like I was when I was climbing mountains. I'm just, to his point, I don't think about it anymore. I'm like, the hell with you. I have this poster that has check marks that says goes to 100. That's when I'm dead.
Uh-huh.
I go, what are we doing this week? Because we got a week here, and we check it off. And we said, we're not going to miss a single day in the gym.
When you say to hell with you, do you mean to hell with like the part of your brain that's like negative?
Yeah. You're getting old. You're going to die.
Yeah.
We see that. We grew up why did I switch? I grew up understanding my dad says you worked, you get a pension, you retire. That's what Pittsburgh was.
Then he died.
Yeah. Then he died. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know if I want to do that. So I just flipped the script and back to me being an isolationist, we'll call it, just because it seems like a fun word. When I was 16, I went into this space where all I said is I got to make a bunch of money. I got to disappear and do my thing. And everyone was just blown. I was so aggressive, so focused. I think I was telling Tim this, I was fighting a lot. We were training a lot, and my martial arts instructor, martial arts Hall of Famer, full contact fighting, was back when Chuck Norris had just come off all his 7 wins and all this stuff. And I was so aggressive that a lot of people would end up being hurt. My first day, we're sparring, 2 guys' shins hit, 1 guy's breaks. I'm watching the class. I haven't decided if I'm going to join this or not. Right. And that's the first thing I'm like, come in. And then because I had such an aggressive pattern because I had to achieve things because I wasn't going to live a short life like my dad. So that just changes all you and just makes you crazy. So I have this baseline that I'm going to get healthy and do whatever. So I'm back in that baseline, which I like, but it's also scary because I'll just become so focused that I have to be careful not to shut things out. So I'm better now. My wife's a big part of it, and I'm better at integrating things. I make it a point to go visit friends. I have a little list of things I got to accomplish. I go have twice a month, have really good visits with friends and stuff like that. Before I'd shut everything out.
You're just grinding,
focused, and relentless.
Yeah.
So I think all this to say, I'm 58, and my wife and I are talking about climbing again. She's like, "Hey, what do we want to go to this mountain?" I'm like, "Yeah, cool, let's go." So we're like, the last thing she looked up, this Costa Rica trek. It's from coast to coast. It's like 150 miles or something like that, and that's not a big deal to me. I mean, that's okay. It's 11 days, so I can do it. Everest was 2 months. I mean, I need that stuff because that's who I am. And my wife always says, you're a martial artist that just happens to do banking. So Tim's helped me find a couple places. I'm going to start getting in the studio again because I realized I was at my best then. But I've realized I was also at my darkest maybe because I was so engaged. So now I have balance again, back when I was 16, sitting in the backyard meditating.
Mm-hmm.
I think I found it again. You lose it because you're so focused.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I went all over the place.
No, it was awesome, man. That's exactly. And so we started with wearables, right? And so we started with like, how did you recognize some of these things? And yeah, I think, it's just one tool.
It helped me pay attention to things to dial something in.
Yeah.
And I started, the funny part was before the wearables came on, I was like, okay, Bob, what are you doing? Why are you not you? And in my backyard, right, it's half an acre, nothing big. I went outside, ran up and down once. That's it. Came back in. She says, what are you doing? I said, I'm starting. And I just did a little bit each time because when you jump into something really hard, it's just crazy.
That's awesome.
Now,
I'm starting.
Yeah.
I'm getting my shit together.
That's it. That's like game time. I'm out there in my underwear in the snow running up and down. And that was like, now I got a big tree log out there that I carry back and forth.
Oh, it's in the door there.
Oh,
So I've met you. I'm getting to know you better now. I've known you for a little while. But after I'd met you like the first or second time, if you'd said like, "Oh yeah, do you know Bobby?" he was meditating when he was 16. Like, I think you probably got the wrong guy.
Yes.
Like, probably not.
Yes.
But I've been thinking about this recently. From what they say, sometime around 25 is when your brain is fully formed.
Yeah.
Prior to that, it's very plastic.
Right.
It's very moldable. So I've thought of the things that you can learn to do before 25. They say it can still change after 25, just not as easy. It's more concrete.
Bullshit.
Yeah, I agree. And that's like the data says it can be changed at any time.
It's still plastic.
It's harder when you're older, but I feel like that stuff that any kids or young adults can learn before 25 is so foundational.
Monumental.
For the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's so cool that you got into that early.
Yeah, no, because I had to. It's like, I explained this. I said, no, I was working 3 jobs to make ends meet to eat. Then they're like, what? I'm like, never mind. You won't get it. And that's where I bought a house. I had no idea how to do plumbing, electrical. Well, I bought a book. I just figured it out. I screwed some stuff up. I asked my neighbor, who was a certified electrician, hey, dude. He's like, yeah. I asked my other neighbors, an architect. I'm like, yeah, you need some structure. Okay. And to your point, I was in my later 20s, probably 28. So, but you can do it. Even to today, I went back to school for a bit, right? Just because I'm just seeing where that is. And because of the way I eat and everything, my brain is so much more dialed, even than when I'm in my 20s. Because back then, food was different too. I mean, but I'm just so much more dialed now.
Are you still strictly carnivore?
I've always been 90% carnivore. I'll tell it that way.
It's okay.
Yeah, because I'll people. What's the definition, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I have a guy who makes I'm drawing a blank on the bread, but the sourdough bread, he makes it with 3 ingredients. I eat that with some honey on it.
Yeah.
It's like, judge me, whatever.
Like, it's damn good. I like the sourdough bread and honey. So yes.
Yeah, because I'll add rice and things when I'm doing longer runs. I haven't run in a while, but I was 14 miles. I've got to just get a little bit more, and your body changes to a fat breakdown and all that stuff. And I don't carry tons of fat, but I have enough to really push. And I'll tell you, your brain, you can push. Nobody knows how hard to push. I learned how hard you can push. I mean, I'm going back to the Everest thing. My first attempt, I was at. You climb the mountain 6 times. Like, you go up, then you stay a little bit and come down, back and forth, right? And so I remember we were going for a summit.
Which is a fucking God. That's gonna be so hard on your brain.
Yeah,
up, down, because you're like, God, I got to go back up.
Yeah, you get angry. You go, but then you depending on how you deal with it. Everyone's a fingerprint. Everyone's different, right? And so it's like, okay, I got to do this next part. This is the work, right? This is the work of doing it, right? And you get up there. And you go up again. And so I was we were all working towards a summit, I can explain later if you want, but it's back and forth and all this stuff. And then you're finally going, okay, we're going to go. Weather looks good. Okay. So we all go, we go up to this camp, then we keep pushing. Usually we'd come back down and rest, but now we're just pushing. And now we're in the death zone. This is 24,000 feet. I got up there. It took me so damn long. And it was so hard on me that I'm laying there. I just crawled in the tent, just threw some oxygen on, just to try to recalibrate. And all I saw in my head is having problems. You have these dreams. Not really. You're not sleeping, so you don't sleep for days. You can't
sleep that high.
Well, you can't. Your body
it's super hard. I guess that's what I'm saying.
And you're just and an old mountain climber says, just lay down. Anything, try to get the body some rest. Okay, great. So I'm laying there, and then we're about to all pitch up to go to the next one, and I'm like, I got up and I can't. I mean, all the emotions come with this. I've used every dollar I had last ditch. And then so I remember it vividly. It's going to throw me a little emotionally here, but we're on these, can't explain this if you can see my hand, right? This is the pitch that we climbed up just the day before, right? For miles. And we're stuck in these little tents that are chipped into the mountain. And there's a rope you have to grab when you come out so you don't fall and die, right? There's that going on. So I get up and I go to the tent next to me, and it was Chip and Vance. Vance was the head of EA Sports. He wrote like Tiger Woods Golf, Madden, all this stuff. He's just a genius. And Vance was so far a genius. And the people you meet climbing, it's just insane. One of my friends is an astronaut, been to space 5 times. He was on that same unit. He came down with me too because he wasn't feeling well. But I was like, I opened up, I said, hey guys, I'm going down. Vance looks up, he goes, hardest decision you've ever made. That was his initial stuff. I'm like, fuck, you're right. And at that point I'm going, I gotta
You're
come
like,
down.
hey, fuck you, man.
Well, it just hit me. But later it's like, that was respectful. Cause he was he totally got, cause mind you, I'm feeling like shit. And to come down, how do you come down the mountain? You clip on this rope and you grab this rope and let it drag with resistance to come down this thing. And I'm exhausted. Right. So you're just like, all these emotions, you're like, oh, I don't have time for emotions. Let's put those on the side, which I'm good at. I can shelf this stuff, which is good or bad. I don't know, when you get stuff done. Anyways, I don't know where I was going with that, but the bottom line is that's where I was going, because you think you're tired, right?
Your mind.
But you're still going. When we went back in 2016, my wife and I, now I'm at 27,500 area called the balcony. You're swapping out some tanks, some oxygen tanks, because at this point you just can't. So I'm walking, I'm on the next pitch. We're going up to what's called the South Summit. And then I had an hour and a half left. Right. So it's 2 a.m., and it's dead quiet. It's perfect. It couldn't have been better weather. Like, you can see all the stars, you're hanging out, and you're just going up, and you and 250 other of your friends right there. Right. And so I was looking left. I go, oh, is that a storm coming in? And I look right. I go, wait, no, it's clear. And I look down at my hand. I go, oh, I can't see. So I couldn't see out of my left eye. Right. So then I turned around to my wife. She's right behind me. And I says, I can't see. And I'm starting to lose more. And she goes, we're going down. I said, no, it's only 4 hours. You go ahead. I'll peel back, just like, she goes, no, come down. So we came down to the tent, and I'm like, I'm starting to feel really bad now. And like, everything's starting to amazingly fall apart. Right. You're at 26,000 feet. It's a high camp. And it's hard to it's impossible to explain if you can't see the space, right? You're on this saddle ridge and you can see the curvature of the earth, right? So you're there. And then she radioing, hey, I need help. And now all these Sherpas are there in their language. And one person said, is that Nikki? And he comes on in English. He goes, yeah, Bob can't see. Get him down now. So I start going down. At this point, I haven't peed in a day, so I'm completely dehydrated, can't see. And I'm coming down this thing, these bowls where, I didn't tell you this, the day before, a guy just fell to his death right in front of us. We watched him just fall down this whole area. And all I said to myself, I put this thing in my head. I go, gotta get to base camp. Otherwise I can't get off. Gotta get to base camp. Otherwise I'm putting everybody at risk. Gotta get there. I just kept moving, locked onto the thing, dragged myself down. I was barely alive, and then I'm down in the last Berkshire area, down at like 20,000 feet. This has been a day of walking, and I could just hear the metal. You got all these pro hardware on, and you hear clinking. I hear my wife clinking. At this point, I'm just like touching her backpack to try to not trip and fall. Because every time, if I stumble, and you can't see because it's white, and then you're blurry, and you got crampons on, and you're carrying 50 pounds, and there's a slope of death to your right, and you're just clanging.
Every step can be do or die.
That's right. I've seen people. Yeah, I've seen a lot. But by the time I got down there,
I guess I have very limited experience with this stuff, but last year I did Orizaba.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And,
nice.
And so anyway, we were so focused on every single step.
Orizaba's like this. I've been on that.
Yeah. And so you're on every single step, because if you don't, you could die.
Absolutely.
And you're in terrible shape. So
you're beat up.
Anyway, this is making me super fucking nervous. Are you talking about this right now?
Yeah, no, you get it. It doesn't matter if Orizaba, what is it, 19 something. It's the same, because you're already tired. And the thing is, you're on a team of people, and then you're on this. I use this rope analogy for when I teach people in banking, right? I said, here, I bring a rope, and I literally bring a good 11 mil. I have that person hold it up there, and I put a little butterfly knot, and so everyone has some kind of knot. And I said, you pull it. And the person up front pulls. And I said, do you feel it? At the end, they're like, no. I go, right. But if that person falls and tired, you're all going to go. And I've seen this shit. It's just, so the analogy is, what I was going to is, you think you're tired. You don't have a clue. You're not tired. I mean, like, I had nothing in the tank, hadn't drank for it, hadn't eaten 2 days, haven't slept in 3 days, and I'm still moving. It's like, so when people today at work, at the office, whatnot, oh, I'm tired. No, you're not. You have no clue. So I think what I'm dragging out here is the human body and the human mind are so capable when you turn the mind on and just can push the amazing things you can accomplish.
Yeah.
How was Orizaba?
Orizaba was great.
When'd you go?
Last January, like this exact time.
Mm-hmm.
Orizaba was great.
Did you do Ixty too? Ixtasawato?
Yeah.
I got more coffee if you want it.
Oh, good. Thanks.
That one almost killed me.
Why?
Well, so I've never done any of this stuff before. And the group of guys that I went with, none of us had done any mountaineering.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we did our research.
Put the time in.
Well, not really.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Well, we thought we did our research and we found out that we were underprepared. But anyway, that's a long story, but our longer story. But
how's that dialed you in? What'd you learn about yourself?
I learned exactly what you were talking about. Like I thought that I had pushed myself to my limits previously, physically and mentally, or not to my limits, but like
You've pushed.
I've pushed.
Yeah.
And then I found out there's a whole nother level. So I got into a bad situation. And is it Ixty or it's why am I?
It's these little ridge line. You go up and it's kind of like flat.
Yeah. And then it's another ridge and another ridge.
Right. And Orizaba is just kind of like
a so I forget which, I can't figure. We did 3 hikes down there. So we
training hikes.
Yep. Yeah. And so Orizaba was the final one. Anyway, so we woke up I didn't sleep at all. Basically, woke up at like 1 a.m. and started our hike at 2.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to this first ridge line, and now it's 7 a.m. and we've been going for 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to this ridge line, and I don't feel good. We're only 5 hours in. I do not feel good, and
altitude was not your friend.
I'm beat,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm looking around at my buddies, and I can't tell how they feel.
That's right. They won't tell you either.
That's right. And so we had this conversation. So we're about 5 hours in. The sun had just come up.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful time. Best time.
Yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah.
Even though I felt like dog shit.
Yeah.
and
we all have. By
I'm like, hey, how much longer do we have to go that way?
Yeah.
And
that's a telltale sign that someone's tired. When you ask that question, you're tired.
And because I'm like, we just came 5 hours up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm beat now. And so this is all going in my mind. And so I ask my buddies, I'm like, hey, how are you guys feeling? And they're like, oh, I'm fine. I'm all right. And I'm like, I'm not okay.
Good for you.
Yeah.
People don't have the courage to say that.
I was scared.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah. And so I was like, I'm not. And I was like, I think I can go another hour and a half that way. Mm-hmm. And then I need to turn around.
Mm.
And
that's being part of the unit. You got to speak your mind. People don't do it.
Anyway, so long story short is we went another 2.5 hours that way, and they wanted to go all the way to the top. And I'm like, guys, I'm not going to the top. I'm going to sit right here. I'll wait for you guys on the way down. Mm-hmm. And we had a guide. And so our guide
hammered you in.
I sat down. I tried to sleep. I laid down and
that's dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. So I felt like so bad. Yeah. Anyway, long story short, then the challenge started, right? Because now I feel absolutely terrible, and I have another 6 or 7 hours back down.
The summit's only halfway.
And so that's when I got into really bad shape. And for the next 3 or 4 hours, I was starting to lose all my body function, right? Mm-hmm. And
shuts down.
And I got so focused. I was like, just walk and eat, and walk and eat a little bit
and drink
a little bit. And so anyway,
the
next 4 hours were
the longest 4 hours of your life.
It was so crazy. And then we had one of my buddies Dan is an ER doctor. And so somebody, I'm not thinking clearly at this point. Somebody goes, "Hey, like, do you want a couple Advil?" And I was like, I don't know, man.
Sure.
Like, fucking, I'll take anything right now. He gives me a couple Advil, and I was so inflamed. This is the way I understand it. I was so inflamed that my organs weren't functioning properly.
Yeah.
I took those Advil, and about 40 minutes later, oh my God, I felt so much better.
Yeah.
So that was a learning experience.
Yeah. Can I jump on that?
Yeah,
Since
yeah,
you're talking about that zone, because I want you to feel better about it. Not that you feel bad about it. It's a learning experience.
Yeah.
So
I learned I could go way farther, way farther.
So
than I thought.
we were on IXD. I think this is my first time. Yeah, I think, because I was teaching rock climbing, and the guy said, "Let's go to the mountain." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's go." I was doing martial arts, riding my bike. I was 28. I was like,
I'm the fucking man.
Yeah, I got whatever. My eyeballs were bulging out of my head when I was trying to breathe. I'm like, what the hell is this punching me in the face? But I ended up this is the second time, because I went back after I was like feeling really defeated my first time. I'm like, I don't fail. That's wrong. So I went back the next year. And so this is me going back. So I'm an XD. We had summited, but everything was going shitty for me. And that was only 17,000 feet. I'm like, what's wrong with me? And so it was a 17-hour day for me, balls long. And I was barely picking my foot going in front of it. And somebody was behind me, just being mindful. By the time I got down, I was like, God darn it. What? But I punched the card. What's wrong? I'm processing all that, right? Because you just like, why am I a failure? I'm not a failure, but I'm a failure because I didn't do so well. So you go through all these things that you beat yourself up, just human nature. So we had, the proverbial taco and beer, and then we jump in the car to go to Orizaba.
You mean like 10 tacos?
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, well, my problem was I was like you, but everyone knew, and I just didn't discuss it. I just went to just push through it like you did. So whatever I ate, I don't know, because now my mind's still not working. So I get in the car, and I have motion sickness, so I have to sit in front. So this is great. I'm like, I'm just going to sit there. I fell asleep, right? I wake up. We're rolling into Pueblo. And I look over at Roberto. He's the driver guide. And I said, I got to piss like a racehorse. Dude, we're in the middle. I said, I don't care. This is happening. He pulls over. I got out. You think I drank a half a case of beer? That's how much I peed.
Yeah.
Got back in the car. 5 minutes later.
Got to pee again.
I do again. He goes, are you serious? And we got walkie-talkies. I said, dude, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's going to happen. There's no bottle big enough in this truck. I do it again. Now we're in the middle of a city, right? This is like not a good idea to do in a foreign country. Then we make it to the hotel. What is the first thing I do? I go right to the bathroom again. And Jesus. Then I started feeling amazing. To your point, you were inflamed and trapped. So what was happening is all the fluid was trapped in me. But I was fighting like a son of a bitch. I'm like, I'm not going down. I'm not passing out. I'm not blacking out. I'm not doing this. And then, so anyways, I get through all that. I'm like, oh, okay, well, all right. So we had to go to Orizaba to climb, which is like a day later. I'm up there. I'm just peeling up the mountain, like, no problem. Like, awesome. Feel great. Great. So the funny part is, they didn't have much knowledge back when I was 28. That's 30 years ago. I could have paid off a mortgage. That's how long ago it was when I did this, right? So to give you perspective. Mm-hmm. So they go, hey, there's University of Pittsburgh when I was in Pittsburgh. Hey, this doc's talking about, edema and stuff like that, and altitude. Let's go. I look, he's talking. They're like 7 symptoms. I had 7 out of 7. I'm like, holy shit, that's any much longer. I could have flipped to the dark side. Yeah. So you don't know, but your body, and I still was able to pull that off, like you were able to pull it off enough to get yourself resounding. And so it's as you get more times you do it, you get better, and body gets adaptable, just like anything else. More times you do it. And I'll give you one more story on the climbing, not to bore you. You can ask me all day long and I won't stop. And that's the danger. So I was in Bolivia climbing. And I don't know if you know, it's Illimani in Bolivia.
I don't know about that one.
Beautiful, 20,000, just abrupt. And it's in the poorest country in South America. You land at 13,000 feet. You've got to move your gear. If you've ever been at 13,000 feet, taking yourself from sea level, I was living, I think, DC at the time. No, Pittsburgh. You show up. Now you're at 13,000 feet.
You're fucked up just there.
And I got 2 50-pound gear bags, and I'm walking. And then we get into this vehicle. They go, "Hey, the vehicle won't start, but it's a Suburban with a clutch. We all got to push it." Okay, so if you've ever pushed a sled at the gym, it's hard. Push a sled at 13,000 feet when you just came from sea level. it was freaking. So we get at the start, and then we're in this crazy town. So anyways, fast forward to the climb. We had couple initial smaller climbs, 17,000 feet or whatever. And then, so we're going up, we're at Condoroy's Nest. It's at 19,000 feet. Beautiful, just gorgeous, because it's all desert, high altiplano. And then boom, the snow mountain right in the middle there. It's gorgeous. Look it up online. It's beautiful. So I'm laying in the tent with a guide because a couple people dropped out because a couple people were having too much problems. And so this is a lesson in leadership. So if you're interested in leadership things, you got to write this one down. This is awesome. So we're same thing, 11 o'clock at night. I'm sorry, let me go back to the one up in Maya Chico just before that. We're all climbing. It's another training climb. We've been moving for hours. Dangerous ridge lines, like literally you can only fit one boot on, right? So, and it's just sheer drop-offs on either side. We get to this one segment that's about as big as this room, maybe.
You guys roped together?
Yeah, we're all roped together. There's no question. So we're all roped together. And then we're at this little shelf, and then we look at the last pitch, which is just this straight up point, right? So now we all got to go up to this straight up thing. And kid you not, drives me nuts. I've been a rock climber. I taught it, just top roping, nothing spectacular. But I get the basics. I've been mountaineering now for years. And they all go, okay, they said, oh, I've never rock climbed. I can't do it. I'm like, now we're making decisions. We're about to go to the last pitch. And everyone's in panic mode. One kid's like, oh, I can't do it. He's starting to panic. I yell at the guy, hammer him in. Because he's just starting to walk off the ledge.
Yeah.
They hammered him in, tied him off. And then
like, just fucking secure that. Dude.
Secure him. Because, we're on this shelf. It's like this. I'm like, there's drop-offs everywhere. You people. And the guide wasn't taking charge. I'm like, I'm taking charge. MFer. I'm just in. Because this is my life now. I'm on that guy's rope, So anyways, we get to this. And then the guide's like walking around. He doesn't know what to do. I can see it on his face. He doesn't know what to do. And he goes to the guy. He goes, hey, are you okay to climb? Yeah, I'm okay. The other one goes, yeah. Another guy wasn't talking. The most dangerous person in your unit is someone who doesn't speak up. Mm-hmm. That is the most dangerous person because you don't know what the hell's in their head. And you don't know when they can flip the switch. I'm watching this guy panic. I'm like, I got that. I know what that is. We can deal with this. So anyways, he goes, we're going down because he's scared. He said that. The guide said that. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing. Now we're walking down these ridge lines, getting to the base camp again. Now all the people in the group are all disheveled and scared. Now we're about to go to a bigger mountain in 2 days. I'm like, this is wrong. So ends up we go to the bigger mountain. We're sitting there. Now I'm in the tent because a couple people dropped off. So I'm in the guide's tent. It's 11 o'clock. We get up and I had this dream. You're not sleeping, so you're just seeing things. And I kept seeing somebody falling in my head. I kept seeing somebody falling on a very straight pitch. And the pitch is like a 70-degree pitch, this last summit bit. And then I'm seeing this. And at 11 o'clock, we get up. He goes, all right, let's go. I said, not going. Because some other guy said, that's what I paid to do to summit. So this guy's attitude is, I gave money to do this, right? You've heard of this stuff. And he's going, is it because somebody said? I go, no, Craig, I just something in my head doesn't feel right. I'm not there. He goes, you're a good climber. You can just, I'm not there. I'm not going. Sure enough, these guys go to climb. They came down haggard. The one guy who didn't speak, who's about my size, fell twice on the pitches. If I was also on there and he peeled me off at 200 pounds, be 400 pounds of momentum along with everybody else. And I don't know what would happen. So thankfully I paid attention to that. But that's the guy who wouldn't talk. Yeah. He wouldn't speak. He was exhausted, barely making it. And that's the risk in life. That's the risk in if you're working on a team, people that don't talk. It's just all correlates to, it's not life and death, but it's bad. So that's why I've learned to come up to people and say, why you got a plaid shirt on, man? You know what I mean? I think in life, I've just seen it too much and you take that with you. Sorry, I got really locked in.
No, that's good. So what you're saying is that, the person who's silent, you are going up to them and finding out how do they feel? Yeah. Why do they think that way? What's going on? Because if you don't investigate, then,
great word.
Then you are putting the whole team in danger.
Yeah, there's that. And exactly. Well said. Then take it to the business life. I've run a lot of divisions and people that don't talk up, or I've sold. Another one, better one is I've had to sell to like big companies. So I'll have 2 boards I got to sell to, and I'm in a room full of people, 11 people, and I'm trying to get $25 million here or there, another 150 million. So I'm just standing there going, I watch it. When one doesn't talk, you know what I do? I say, hey, Tim, please tell me your feedback. Tim goes, well, I don't know about this. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's the one part that just would have sabotaged me had I left the room.
Mm-hmm.
So after I do all that stuff, like the chief, the head legal team, the CFO of the company, he comes out to me afterwards. Man, you know how to talk to a room. You can command a room. I'm like, it's all about my climbing. I have seen this. I've seen people fall to their death. I've seen people struggle. I've had to help people. The bottom line is, if you're in these situations, you've got to help that person off. Now I'm going to commit to, I can't just leave the body. I've got to take gear out of his bag because he didn't speak up and he's a wreck. Now I'm carrying more stuff. Now I'm putting myself at risk.
Yeah.
Anyways, mountaineering is in everything.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've only done the one trip, and you're making me think about.
Where's your next one?
I don't know. I'm still scared.
Go to Ecuador. Or go short climbs, and they're awesome.
Aconcagua?
Well, that's the Aconcagua was in South America. I've been
That's in Chile. Sorry, yeah, you're saying
that's in Argentina.
Oh, okay.
And that's right. But one climbing guide said, he goes, mountaineering is like having you hitting your head with a hammer the whole time, and it's great when it's done. Phil Ursler, credit to him. So yeah, you can do anything. It's just an experience, and you want to see how far you can go in life. You can do that.
Yeah. It's interesting stuff. That's for sure. Push you to.
I got like 10 more easy stories.
I bet.
Being in Antarctica was cool, and watching a guy who's ahead of a big thing trying to ask, hey, who wants to carry my stuff? I'll pay you. This guy was worth gazillions of dollars, and we all go, fuck you. And he almost fell off the edge and just peeled us off. And the guide's like, you will want your stuff. And it's like, if you can't get to Antarctica easy. All right. So, and you're 600 miles in, shit goes wrong, you're dead. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, that's what also I think is most of the, where are any of these places like, I don't know. You don't really have a lot of resources in any of these locations, right? So like if you have a problem, you have to get yourself out.
Yeah. So the way I think about it is, could I walk out I could walk out on no water, no food. Well, there's a limit. Your body will shut down and shut off. But I can get somewhere in Aconcagua. I can get somewhere in Bolivia. I can get, et cetera, et cetera. You can't, in Antarctica. You're 600 miles in, and it's all ice and rock, and no one's coming for you.
Mm-hmm. I guess what I'm getting at is like when I was thinking about Orizaba, like they don't have search and rescue.
No.
Right. And so like nobody's coming for you. And nobody can really carry you out. Mm-mm. And so if you have a problem, you have to get yourself out. So that was, I would say, the weight of that, whether it's Orizaba or
it doesn't matter,
or any of those, the weight of that was acknowledged and should be. Because I think some people, inexperienced people, they may go do these things and they think that like search and rescue is coming for you. They're not.
Mm-mm. Well, and that's why I talk to everybody. To your point, I will become everybody's friend, because the best thing you can do in any group environment is be appreciated, be likable, be helped. Because once you commute that knowledge, and it's amazing. Everyone will start to do that, and then everyone jumps in, except the self-righteous. There are people that just care because they're that guy who says, "That's what I paid for on Come Summit." But in life too, right? You want to be around people that'll be there for you the day that it's 2 a.m. and they need you to pick them up at the airport. That's a friend. My buddy once said this to me. He's like, "That's a friend. They're going to come and get you." Mm-hmm. You want those people in your life, because the times you're having a hard time, they'll help carry your load.
Yeah.
And at times you're having a good time, to help celebrate your life. So choose people like that, because it's like on a mountain, you're going to live and die. Sorry, I get really emotional.
Yeah.
This is great. What advice do you have for those people that don't speak up for, whatever reason, if it's fear or?
That's a great question. So you would ask the why don't they speak up? I think people need to self care. People need to self-search. People need to have confidence in it. People shouldn't let other things that people and be judged by them. We all were that when we were younger. Like, what do people think of me? Oh, I'm afraid. And then people don't talk and bring it up. I wish people could find the courage to do it. But I say this all the time. You can't find courage on aisle 5 at the grocery store. People should always put themselves in situations where it makes pulls the best out of them. And then you do it once or twice, you're like, I get it. But if you're always coddled, protected, which I see a lot of that in some of the people that work for, I shouldn't say work for me, but people I've seen in the workforce, because my wife's in HR too. A lot of people have been coddled and protected because they thought that was the right thing. The parents aren't wrong. That was what made sense because it's their child, right? You're going to do the mate. But those people have never stressed to understand how am I feeling to be able to articulate it. There will always be people that will never talk because that's who they are, and that's okay too. But that's up to you, I would say, is to help them, right? If you're in that environment, you say, hey, I see you okay? What's going on? Like, you're talking to your buddies, hey, I don't feel so good. Those guys didn't want to say it because that's machoism at its best, right? And could be.
Yeah, it totally was. I mean, as soon as I said that, several of them spoke up and said, I feel like shit too.
Oh, good. Good.
And so it was like, and one of my buddies,
someone had to break the seal.
Ian, who's been on the podcast, Ian was like, I'm really glad you said that. Thank you. As I feel like shit too. And I'm like, I didn't want to put you guys in a bad position because I needed you guys to check on me is basically. And then for the rest of the day, they were, hey Kyle, how you doing? I'm all right. Or I feel like shit, I need you guys just make sure that I'm eating and drinking every 45 minutes.
Well, what you caused, and what to your point is now that your buddies felt they had to be stronger for you. So they, even though it felt like shit, started going, because we're all really punks. We like to say, oh, it's really hard. But, once they said, well, my buddy doesn't feel good, I'm going to get over my crap and help my buddy. I mean, that's the environment we need to build. So to re-answer that question is, it's up to us who has the courage to help teach people how to be somewhat courageous, because it will change their life.
It's funny because literally, so that hike, they took care of me, and then Orizaba, I took care of them.
Gee, what a surprise. They're right.
They got in, they were fucked up in super bad shape. Mm-hmm. And
shouldn't have been drinking that night before. That's our fault.
No, we weren't. And so anyway, so we worked it out the next day, but I noticed, I was like, these guys are fucked up and they need help. Yeah. And they just needed a little food and water to kind of get themselves back,
They didn't know what they needed.
For an hour and a half for about an hour and a half, they just needed food and water, and they screwed themselves 3, 4, 5 hours earlier because they weren't eating and drinking enough. Yeah.
Because it's a whole different calculation up high.
So one of the things I did was the only thing that made me, really the only change I made, I set an alarm every 55 minutes on my phone.
Yeah, ding.
For 12 hours in a row. And so I ate and drank every 55 minutes. Yeah. I felt like a rock star in Orizaba. Yeah. I was like, dude, I got this. Uh-huh. 2 days earlier, I was dead.
Didn't get this. Yeah. Well, you don't do it here. So you're changing how you act, and you got to dial it in.
Yeah. So
see how your body reacts.
Anyway, it was a learning experience.
There was almost a fight I was in Russia. We had one of the locals, a Russian guy, and he wanted to fight us because he was mad that we weren't going at the pace that he wanted to go to. And we had a unit again, and it was sideways hail and snow. I mean, Elbrus is the highest in Europe, and it's next to the Black Sea in a desert. So it's just violent storms just show up. So we're walking up in this violent sideways storm, couldn't see shit. And the guy doesn't stop to take breaks to eat. And we're all just like, and this guy wants to start a fight in the middle of the thing with me. So I just, I'm not really afraid of confrontation. So I just turn around and go, I took 10 weeks of Russian. I have a couple words, and I'm just like standing up this guy in the middle of nowhere. And we all did pull off, because I'm like, we're done. I'm not being on this thing. This is violent man. Then another group went up the next day, and the same thing. The guy's pushing people. I'm like, what? You're at, we were going to 18,000 feet. We were at 15. I'm like, this is crazy. But so people become different people in tense situations. One more than you got to really stop me. This other one, we were on Denali at 14,000 feet. We were running.
Well, they're on edge.
Yeah.
Right? And so they're sometimes they don't even know what they need or want.
Or the why.
Yeah.
It was just aggression. I had people just being aggressive. At another one, we were running out of food and the animalistic comes out of people. And thank God I'm not afraid. And I confront. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen on my watch. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it in martial arts too, which I can speak to a lot more than
Mhm.
climbing. But you see that side of people that come. I mean, there's some people I won't train with
Yeah.
or spar with because you just when they get that much pressure,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you're not like you.
They snap.
Yeah, and it's not safe or fun for anyone.
No, there's been a couple times. I mean, I've been doing this in 91, and I've had a lot of fights and a number of many students. I remember a guy, we were fighting, and the way our martial arts is traditional Japanese martial arts, traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu, which it's built for if 5 people come at you kind of thing. So when my instructor, who was a full combat fighter, which we'd spar, there was no time. He would just go, Ajime, you begin. And we'd just fight until he noticed somebody about to take a really serious upper hand and stop you. Who knows how long the fights would go on. They're shorter or longer. So I remember one guy, we were we would go 100% every time. And at one point I was taking my gi off later. I see his footprint on me. I'm like, it just gets really intense in those moments. To your point, it's amazing. Martial arts, why I love it so much is you gain the ability if you become a martial artist, I'll call it, instead of a fighter. It's become a martial artist. Fighters do this too, but you zone everything out. You're just so focused on this thing. You can't see, you go blind on the signs. So, I mean, we just see that and I'm like, wow, I wonder, grateful nothing broke. I mean, I don't know. How could I have a footprint in me? And it's been like a half an hour since we were just sparring. How's that there? But and I had a guy who was ex-special forces. He was the guy who they gave back then. They had a deck of cards. He had to go find people. He and his unit, they needed no training. They would just go house to house, flash bombs, all this, just aggressive. And he wanted to do some jiu-jitsu with me, and I did some, and I saw the look in his eye. He was behind enemy lines at that time.
He was on.
He was times 10 on it. And I'm already tired. I grappled with one guy just before that. I was doing different types of techniques. And I was like tired already. Now I'm doing this guy who was national gymnast before he went into the special forces. One of the top guys. I mean, like he talks, when I was running by mile 50, my one leg was starting to, I'm like, this guy's just some total badass. And when he was fighting, I saw it in his eyes, and I had to stop him. And I was just down. I just got an ankle pin because I was like, I'm desperate. I just got it and he tapped out. I'm like, thank God I'm exhausted, because he was switched. Like he wasn't going to stop. So it is difficult, but people's minds can go into these dark places and they don't know it. And that's the danger out there.
Yeah, that's how everyone gets hurt.
That's how everyone gets hurt. Yeah. I had to take a couple people to hospitals from that stuff.
I'll be right back.
So if we back up to, you said you got your first property when you were 24. What'd your life kind of look like through high school or after high school? Did you go to school after high school? Yeah,
I went to college. I got a degree in finance, and I went to this school that it cost $3,000 a year, and I was making $4,000 a summer. So because I had no other way to do it. And then came out, and I was working when I came out, my dad was ill, and then he was in a hospital, and I was a cook at the time, and Pittsburg that's when there was a big dip in mills and everything. So it was like 12% unemployment, something like that. So I just took this job in bill collecting just so I can have some stability, so I can see my dad. And it was great. I'd go knock on doors to collect money in the hood. People would, say things to me all the time. And it was, I remember one day you knock on the door, and I'd go to my client, and I was like, oh, I know Dan has this guy. So I went and knocked on his door, and the woman goes, you don't know, do you? I said, no what? She goes, he ain't here. I'm like, all right. I call back to the office, because you have to call the office after every visit. He goes, you didn't go to Bob Smith's place, did you? I go, well, yeah, I know he just shot his girlfriend last night. I'm like, oh, okay. So that was where I was hanging out. And it was, you have this whole other, you lose a lot of fear factor there. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. And just thought about that. But then so I was working at the country club, waiter at the time. I think at this point I'd been a cook for years, and just a waiter made more money in a different time slots, and I could work later and work my day job and then work that. And then I then girlfriend / going to be wife, we bought a property with her sister and brother-in-law, big 4,000 foot old home. And then we all moved in there. And then so I just started doing all the fixing and stuff and learned how to plumb. And like her brother was a plumber, or a steam fitter, they call it. And he did like big boilers. So I learned how to do all that stuff. And I would, after a couple of years in the collection, the bill collections, I said, okay, well, this one guy over there, he said, well, my dad works at this bank. Maybe I said, great. I go over there and I'm just trying to get in. He goes, well, we can be a teller. Like, great. Start as a teller. So I had a teller job, and then I had 2 bartending gigs at this point because I had to offset. I was making a whole $18,000 a year, which was nothing. And then, so then I'd come home at night and work on a property and everything. But during that time, 7 family members of mine died within 10 months. My wife was cheating on me with a guy at work. So I had all this time, and martial arts saved me. I was training a lot. I remember while I was sitting in the basement, I could still see it. My wife she didn't want to admit she was doing something. Like, who wants to be the bad person?
She was scared of herself.
Probably a great statement. Probably a great statement there. I didn't think about it that way. But anyways, I just got back from, training, and you heard a little bit about the background. It's very aggressive. So I'm sitting, I think did I have my gi on or not? Or just whatever. I'm sitting there just exhausted. She said something. I said, well, she goes, maybe we can just date. I go, what? Maybe Milton, the guy that she was hanging out. She got mad and she punched me, and I'm looking at it. I go, okay. I'm like, you're just going to hit me. I'm like, what? I didn't do anything here. And so I went through all that, and thankfully going back to martial arts, which also made me a little bit angry. I've had all this loss, all those things, all these problems, and made me more aggressive. And now I got this going on. So what was that like? It was hard. I mean, I had a little calendar in my glove box of where I had to be when I got paid. And that was the thing. I'm like, I had to figure this all out. Right. And had a stash of cash in my glove box for things that I needed. And I worked an inordinate amount. And then when that all happened, they had to refinance the house. They gave me, I got like $5,000. That's all we were at this point. It was too new. I had just redone a bunch of stuff, and it was like 20 grand extra than before. So I had $5,000. I had this truck that I bought, my first truck I've ever bought, right? It was new, and I was able to pay.
Yeah, but if you're making $18,000 a year, $5,000 is a lot.
It was massive.
It's a lot of money.
But I had to pay something off because now I'm going to go. I'm on my own again, and so and I didn't want to give up my training. Right, I was not letting that go. So I was training a lot, and then I was helping my instructor. I was teaching, fitness boxing. He taught at the university too. So I'd go and help teach classes at this point because I had enough skills. And then I'm teaching fitness boxing. Then I'm back up at the bank, and then I'm working bartending. I'd work all day at the bank. Like Wednesday was like my day off from regular things because bars aren't as active, and in the bank it was like kind of worked out. So I'd work, Thursday, Friday at the bank, then go straight to this bar in this little town, actually this little pensioner town, we'll call it. And I'd 10 bar till like 5. I'm forgetting all the things. And then I'd drive up the road to the country club at 5:05, and I'd be there till 3 a.m. And then next day I'd be back at that bar at 10, and then I'd do all night, and then I'd be at the bank the next day. And then I'd work on things, and I'd go train and all that stuff. And I remember dating, right? I said to this one guy, I said, look, Monday night we can hang out. Other night I work, and Monday night I do laundry. So we can hang out at the laundromat. And sure enough, we were hanging out at the laundromat, and it was hilarious. And that was it. I'm like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this stuff. And that's where I got really aggressive and had to, work harder. And then I got assistant manager job of 2 branches. And then I just did all these things. And at one point I'm like, okay, I feel a little more stable. I moved into this one apartment. It was $200 a month. And you went in this old building that was an old hotel, and you walk up and you go up to the 3rd floor. There's nothing there. You walk out on the landing deck and then into this little apartment. It was a death trap. Like the fire escape was completely blocked off. So it was just dead, crazy. And for $200 a month, that just helped sustain me because now I had less overhead. What's my fixed cost? Let's drop that, right? And then I ended up, once I got to enough, I was going to buy this other property at 28. And I advanced on some credit cards, put it in here, and bought a 4-unit building that I went into that I knew nothing about, right? And I had a couple tenants, and then I had started figuring things out, right? And I just took out one of the apartments, left the other one. I was remodeling it. So I'd work all day again. And I was working at the bank. Work all day. I was a sales guy. So I was top sales guy. So I did okay. And then I was still now down bartending one job every now and then. And then I'd come home and work on the property till like midnight. That was still, since I'm in the bartending thing, I'm still drinking more than I should. So I'm coming home. I start after training all day, have a couple of drinks, working on. I remember this.
You definitely didn't have an Aura ring on, or
no.
wearable.
I remember it vividly. I'm cutting some wood, saw kicks back, and it's like midnight. I'm like, I'm done for the night. I just I just kept work. I went until my body said go to bed. And I did that for a couple of years. And that was a learning time. To your point, your brain's really developed. So that was a learning time. And I was still teaching and teaching extra. And I didn't have a life other than that.
Yeah, I thought the other thing too, when I was saying your brain's not developed, or your brain, they say, is fully developed when you're 25. When you're younger, you can learn so much more. You also are naive enough or not calloused enough to just try shit.
That's a good way to say it.
You know, when you're 50, you might be like, that's never going to work. But if you're 20, you're like, it could work. It probably
You're
won't,
also not that scared of it.
That's what I mean, is you haven't been beaten down.
Yeah,
enough
consequence. That's a good point.
So you just will take the chances and do the things that.
Yeah, and the other thing is there's something about like, you're like, well, I don't have any fucking money now. So like if I lose $2,000, who cares?
Yeah.
It's $2,000.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't have anything. So fuck it.
Yeah. But my mindset always was, I'm going to go get it. And that's just always resonated with me. It's like, I won't fail.
Yeah.
And that's where my wife said this to me the other day when she was asked, her just losing her mother. She just asked about some things, and she looks at me, and I tell her this parts of these stories. She goes, that goes to your character. You are extremely resilient. And I am. Back to your point when I said earlier, I'm 58, but my mindset is I'm going to go. That's why you helped me find a location. I went to a couple of locations. I'm going to go do it. And my wife might say, well, I'm a little nervous about that. Don't care. I'm doing it because it's time to do it. I didn't say don't care. But she's now on board with, because that also changed her mindset. She goes, maybe we should go do this. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And she's back to climbing again. So I think you're right. But going back to the head game, when you're younger, and what you guys just said is 100% right. But why does it have to stop at 50?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's where I think society is trained to say, well, it's time for you to retire. Because that's what you're supposed to do at this age. You're supposed to wind down. But I've just turned the dial up to 11. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's systems that are set up, right, for people to follow.
Who set them up?
Well, it depends. We could talk about a financial one, right? Like a 401k, right? Well, that's set up by financial institutions, so you can give your money to them for free, and they'll go make 10%, and they'll give you 3.5%.
That's right.
Off of your money, right? And so it's like, and so people don't even realize that. They just like, wait, you just gave your money to somebody else for free, and they're giving you 3.5%, and they're going to make 7%, and then another financial institution that's also like double, triple, quadruple dipping on that same amount of money is going to go lend. Like, and this is your world.
Come on, man.
You're going to go lend 10 times out.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That's a system that people are like, well, like I'm going to retire at 50, I'm going to retire at 62, right? So I'm going to retire at 62 and I'm going to have this much money in the bank. And so it's like I don't have to think about it. It's already well thought out for me.
Yep.
And I'm like, of course, like, well, these are trusting organizations. Like, they're not going to lose my money. No.
Well,
like, that's one that's like, there's these systems that tell people there's a timeline and you follow this. And so those things trap people.
You're right. But why do you have to follow it?
You don't.
Okay, great.
You don't.
So, but why do people follow it?
Because they're lazy.
Okay, thank you.
Or brainwashed. Like
And so I have a 401k. I'm not necessarily against it, but I also realize what's happening. Like, I realize that, like, there's a system set up and it's not to help me.
Right.
It's not, the system isn't to help me. It just so happens to be that a byproduct of it can help me.
Yeah. You can use it as a tool so you don't have to worry about stuff. And I flipped it on its head watching, because you have to decide what works for you, right? That's what we do. So when I saw that, I said, I want to do everything. So I've been on every continent. I'm good. I said to people, one person said this to me, it blew my mind. I didn't even think about it. They go, you can get hit by a bus right now. Your dying words, you were saying, I had a good go of it. But, again, I was used to that system until my dad died.
Yeah. And then you're like, well, this doesn't work.
Yeah. He didn't get it. Why am I going to, but we all need a trigger. We all need people like us that's saying, oh, you don't have to break the mold to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Take a time machine, go back to caveman time. You weren't saving a pile of rocks over here for something else. What were you doing? You were existing every day for your life because you could die.
Yeah.
So why can't we as a society get that and see the value in that?
You can.
Okay.
You can.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember when I first met with you, we were talking about business stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was why I met with you. And you, like, the thing that stuck out was fear.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking fear, fear of setting goals or expectations. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to that? Just fear in general, or how it runs people's lives or holds people back?
100%. I've built this over for a long time, and I created this statement. So, this is mine. No one steals it. And we're documenting it. So you remember when you were a kid and you'd go down to the local, grade school, and there's a little, basketball court there, and it's usually fenced off and locked off, whatever, because it's their stuff. And there's a little tear in the fence. This is my analogy, and I've told people this a number of times ago. You would pull the fence back to crawl in there, right? And then once you're under, like, yeah, man, I made it, right? And so I make this analogy to everybody. Once you say this, you can easily break your own fear. I say you got to first break through the fence of fear to play in the court of courage, right? Break through the fence of fear to play in the court of courage. The reason why there's so much fear for people is it's unknown. So you can give a list. I'm not a psychologist. You can give a list. You say, well, feel of failure. People think something is about me and all that stuff. But it really boils down to is you don't know how to get started, don't know what it is. So today it's called YouTube. You can look up anything and take a risk and do stuff. And then I always say to people, well, if that person did it, you're a human. You can do it too. It's just they push through it. What happens is, and I've read a lot of books on the brain, just that other stack of ones for food, as many stack on brain and how these things work and plasticity and all those things. It's your body's in self-preservation mode 24/7. It's pushing through that is how you can break through that goal. So what you say is, it'll say to you, you'll start doing it subconsciously. It says, well, don't you move that over here. Okay, that's better. And that's just safety. It's subconsciously talking to you 24/7. And I say, no, I want this. And you push through it. And all of a sudden the brain lets go, goes, all right, screw you. I'm going to find another reason to stop you. And it keeps trying to stop you every day. And that's what it does, is its job, because it thinks it's self-preserving. So once you hit the override button, you got to keep hitting the override button. Then when you hit the override button so much, I don't even think about that. Like someone came to me, hey, I'll get you going. I started another thing for somebody. I just did it. I'm like, I don't know. Let me do some research. Well, look, I can use AI. Hey, what do you think I should do? Gave me all these things. Okay, great. Here, let's do this. They're looking at me like I'm God. I'm like, no, really, it's like I just looked stuff up. But people stop because they don't know what to do. They don't know where to start.
It's so true. Like it's for us, it's been this this podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when we first started this podcast, we were like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
This is so stupid.
Yeah.
We
like,
talked
this
about it
is
for years
scary.
before we started.
Right? We're like,
Yeah.
why the hell would we, anyway, what are we doing? And then we just started interviewing friends and family, close people we knew.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we're like, oh shit.
Because it was safe.
Yeah, exactly. And then we're like, And we we rationalize the shit out of it.
Yeah,
right?
you did.
Well, we're not gonna ask anybody we don't know.
Yeah.
And
We don't
so
look stupid.
then we started reaching out. This is like very recent. This is like in the last 2 months.
Uh.
Then we started reaching out to people that we don't even know.
Yeah.
And now that's not even a problem. It's like, look, I'm going to reach out to some random. They're not random, but they're somewhat random. Of like, hey, do you want to be on our podcast? We'd like to meet you.
So you mad at yourself now?
No, not
Good.
at all.
Good.
Not at all. But I guess it's
you
like
understand it.
It's like, well, yeah, that was so easy. It's so easy now.
I still look. You heard some things from me, and I didn't get a chance to hear a lot of the greatness that you guys have done. I'm sure it's the same power of statements that you have that I have. I still get afraid of stuff, and I go, God darn it, dumbass! You've been on death's doorstep. Get over it. And I have to yell at myself.
Yeah.
So to your point, it's in everybody, man. It's in Elon Musk. I mean, but he just screw it.
Yeah. For
Yeah,
sure.
that's such a cool breakthrough, the offense of fear to step on the court of courage.
You could see it in your mind.
Yeah.
If you tell people stories.
Well, and you did all, if you think about it like that's an analogy, you did it all the time as a kid. I remember jumping the fence to go play on a basketball court or whatever it was, right? And you're not supposed to be there. Yeah. It's closed, right? You're like, fuck it. I don't give a shit. I'm going to play basketball.
Because you didn't have a risk associated with it or a risk of loss.
Yeah. And you're like, I want to, like, simple is like, I want to play.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, me and my friends want to play. Cool. The court is closed. We don't care. What's somebody going to do? Tell you no?
Yeah.
Like, okay, fine. Tell me no.
What's next on your podcast then? What's the next level? What are you afraid of? Anything? Come on, let's open up.
I was going to
therapy hour.
Hey, this is a podcast about you, not us.
My follow-up was, so you get through the offensive fear.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're on the court of courage? Like,
yeah. So when you do on the court of courage is you maximize it, right? And then you maximize it to a point where it's adding value to you that makes you the next better level person. Then you take that learning and apply it to the next thing that would add something to you. Maybe you can help me with my struggles because I have done things. I know I can do the next thing again, but when I get there, it's like, why? I'm at a point now, this is where my problem is, sharing, right? I'm 58. I'm like, why do it? I know I can do it and be successful. Who cares? And so I've rationalized every dosh darn thing. And you know, what's interesting, a couple of good books that I read too were when you were a kid, what was real meaningful, because that's what you'll do the rest of your life. And it'll just wake up and want to do it. You know, I wake up every day, I don't have a job kind of thing, right? So
what's your passion?
Yeah, my passion is making a difference in someone's life. I get a little teary eyed when like just yesterday. Yeah. This guy called, good story, right? Is they asked me to take over this division in institutional, like you were talking about 401k. We take institutional money and invest it for people. I had been doing lending my whole life. And they go, hey, Bob, could you? And I said, dude, I've never invested in my life. You want me to do what? You want me to run billions of dollars? Mike, I have no idea. He goes, you know, lead people. You just go. Do you want to do it or not? I said, yeah, sure. I talked to some guy. He's like, hey, you want to do this or not? Yeah. Let me just call somebody. Let me call Tim here and find out what he does all day. He tells me, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And then what the hell? So I go and do this thing. And
do you want to do it or not?
That's exactly what it was. Usually there's a process. You go through an interview. Oh, I'd like to sell myself on you. I'm like, dude, I'm at lunch. You're walking like 90 miles an hour. Okay, I'll just do it because you seem like this kind of guy. And at this point, I feel threatened. I'm like, okay. And I'm sitting there going, I don't have a clue. So I go into success mode and I go, all right, let me just go around and ask everybody in this building what they like about this division, not like about this division. So I go and ask everybody. We hate this. This guy doesn't do that. Okay, great. I came back. I got everybody in the room. I go, okay, nobody likes you guys for these reasons. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So we're going to change these and it's going to work. And they're looking at me like, I don't understand what just happened. I go, yeah, that's the truth. So we go ahead and do this. I fire one guy because he needed to. Another guy wasn't doing so well. So I had someone else talk to me because, yeah, I'm going to retire. Okay, great. So I clean house. So I go ahead and do this. And then I have the one sales guy left. And what is the business, right? So we have to go. I tell people, they say, what's your job? I said, I go visit strangers and convince them to give me all their stuff. I mean, that's literally what I do. So we have to walk up to these people. You got $150 million. Can you give it to me? We're going to invest it. Yeah, sure. Here you go. I mean, it doesn't, it takes time. So,
hey, we're going to give you, I don't know, 9, 8, 11%.
hey, we're not Shylocks. We're okay. Come on. Then, so I'm telling you the story because I'm getting to the point of what really moves me. So this guy on the team, wonderful man, extremely intelligent, like just a brilliant guy, but extremely quiet. He's in a role where he has to be gregarious, right? He's got to be out there talking to people. So he's not. So I'm like, well, I'll fill his shoes. I'll go out and do this stuff. And so one day I go, hey, yeah. So this guy, Jeb Blunt, which I love, he's a good sales leader, and him and Anthony Neri, said, they're coming into town. It's a seminar on sales and stuff. I'm going. I'm paying for it myself. If you want to go, let me know. But that's on. Bank's not paying for it. So I pay for mine. He pays for his. He comes. I see him there. We're going through everything, and Jeb Blunt's like an icon to me because.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know this name.
Well, have you ever heard of Zig Ziglar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Zig Ziglar was the man, right?
Uh-huh.
Keep moving the pump. You don't prime the pump. That's sales, right? Jeb Blunt. So I see Jeb, man, and I've read a number of his books. I said, I really appreciate, Zig Ziglar was my guy. And he goes, Zig Ziglar was my guy. I'm like, it's just like a carry for it. It's like if it was his kid, that would be him. And he's just spectacular. So if you haven't read Jeb Blunt stuff, everyone should listen to his podcast. It's just really dialed in. So at the end of this, the guy goes, he says to me, man, that was really interesting. I wasn't doing those things. Okay, great, man. So we go back. It hadn't made goal, that division, in 10 years. Within 6 months, we're at goal. And I decided to leave because I'm like, I'm done. I want to move west. It's 50. I met a guy in the bathroom, and he's like, not in that kind of way. It wasn't strange.
Yeah.
That's where all good stories start.
Yeah.
There.
I'm hitting the head. I'm like, dude, I want to move west. He goes, I just became national director of the bank, and you want to run my Denver office? I go, yeah, man, out. So I'm leaving, and it turns out, they were going to offer me even more because I gave this other idea. So anyways, I'm like leaving at a peak of they were going to give me so much more and make me in charge of so much more because I did such another wonderful job. And I'm like, F it. It's one of the fourth largest bank in the nation. It's very, very prominent, very good bank. I was making a ton of money, like 3 times as much as I'm making now. It was ridiculous. It was just great. But I was also living in DC. It's expensive. Talk about DC. He said, don't get me started. But anyways, I tell you that long-winded way to say, I get here, do my thing. Out of the blue, the guy calls me. He says, Bob, I'm number 1 in the bank. Because I helped him get there.
Mm-hmm.
That was moving. Going 10 steps forward, just the other day, he called me. He says, hey, Bob, it's time for me to move on. I'm going to talk to these things, but I figured I'd call you because you know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't talked to him in years. And he calls me. Now, that's just one. I probably have 10 or 12 that do this. People put stuff on LinkedIn. Bob is the best, whatever. I haven't seen Blossom Moses was her name, Indian woman. She's like, he's the most neutral, great guy. I'm like, she just puts this up. I haven't talked to her.
Yeah, a long time.
So those things move me. So the moral of the story is, to answer your question, what I want to do is impact a life. And I don't need a trophy because no one's really done that for me, because people try to get ahead. They don't care to help you. They want to get ahead. So they want to get what they can out of you. And that was DC. And looking back, to sum it all up in a way that everyone can, I think, identify. My father, when he died, quiet guy, involved in the church, right? There were 200, I might cry, so hold on. 267 people is what I need to see the day I die. That's how many people need to sign that book for me, because 266 is how many signed for my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And that I will have done something right.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm standing there talking to somebody. I said, how do you know my dad? Well, he used to fix my computer. I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
So he would go in at night, 11 o'clock at night, work on these computers that were bigger than 10 of these rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And these people they just interacted with a guy who fixed a computer, and they came to his funeral.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what matters to me. So I've been redialing, what does it do? But my martial arts, the number of people that came through my studio in a community in DC where, as I told you, dead guy around the corner, difficulty with drugs, kids, no parents, gang members came in to learn how to protect themselves. He said, yeah, I'm in a gang and I just got to protect myself and my family. Seriously. So that other impact, they said to me, one of the old timers who used to loiter there, he would sit in front of my dojo to protect my space. So in a community like that, that's what you did, right? So bunch of brothers, and he's like, no, we got you, man. You know, I've had situations where people try to come in my dojo and I had to throw them out. Like people were trying to, it was dangerous. Right. And so he said to me, he goes, we got you because you've changed this community. So I changed the community by having a studio. Tashi, my first kid, just like your podcast, I don't know if I'm gonna do this right.
Yeah.
Got this kid in there. I'm like, I don't know what to do. It was scary as hell. And I'm like, will I succeed? And thankfully, I had a good paying job that was covering the rent and all that stuff, and I could put all the materials in and all that stuff. But then I got to this point where like people are like, their grades are crazy. People are now, guy, he's working for the District 9 Supreme Court. It's like these people come to me and say, you've changed my life. So that's my mission. And I convinced myself that banking, I'm doing that, but I am. And that's why working with SCORE, I'm helping people. I don't care. I just tell them the truth because people don't like to hear the truth. And I want it to come from a place of experience and not just saying it to say it. So all those things, if I can dial it in where every day I want to, almost sit down and cry because how happy I am with what I've caused, the change in their life matters. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing it and it's just popping up. And I'm like, well, that's been years. So everything we do, everything you guys did today, you did yesterday, last week, do it right because people are going to look up to you and they're going to take action on it and you're causing their life to change. So that's what we need to be as a society. If we all do that, my God, how cool would it be? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think it answered what you're saying. It just went on too much.
Yeah, no, that was
great.
That's why I'm glad I got to introduce you to Brian because that's someone that he's been here for so many people in this community. And everything I can resonate when you speak in martial arts terms because that's the what I've had in this community since I've moved here.
Yeah.
It's just that everyone's helping everyone's teaching each other, making an impact.
Yeah, it got to be useful. Arnold Schwarzenegger wrote a book, Be Useful. If you get a chance to read that, that's great. He just totally makes sense. Simple stuff.
How long have you been in Montana?
2019, end of 2019.
That's right.
That's the same year me and Kyle moved here.
Yep.
So everybody hates us.
At least we've all got something in common.
Now, I know where you moved from. You're like an old PA guy like me, oddly enough.
Yeah, New York's where I'm from. And
right on the edge. Yep.
Yeah. San Diego.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You think everyone hates you?
Yeah, I moved here from San Diego.
Why?
All kinds of reasons. I would say it felt good. My intuition told me to move here.
Okay, there it is. What were you doing in San Diego?
I've been in the construction industry for 15 years or so. So I was doing commercial construction there. And then I got a job that I would travel around the country and check on large projects. And so I was like, well, let's move. I'm going to be on a plane and in hotel rooms. And so let's try something different. I had kind of looked at San Diego and I thought loved it for all kinds of reasons, but San Diego was getting becoming a tougher place to be and live.
Cost-wise, economic-wise.
Yeah, cost-wise, economic-wise, quantity of people, right? So the population of the county doubled in the course of the 8 years I was there.
And dirt, they're not making more dirt.
That's right. And so just, it's just life is a little harder, right? Traffic and going to the grocery store and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I kept kind of paying attention to where I would go on vacation and I kept going to the mountains. And so I was like, hey,
common sense,
something to that. If I'm kind of going out in the woods and being in the peace and quiet, tranquility. And so work has always been intense. And so I was like, well, how do I counteract to that?
Yin and yang of life. Huh?
That's right. Yeah. And so, I spent a lot of time in San Diego kind of running super hard and a lot of drinking, a lot of hanging out on the beach. And,
that's construction.
Yeah. So exactly. So I would go from, working a lot of hours, super intense, and then I would go party.
Yeah.
And that got old.
Yep.
And that got unhealthy.
Yep.
And, so I slowed down for the last handful of years in San Diego, comparatively.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why I moved. I was like, hey, let's try something different.
You got to escape your environment sometimes.
Mhm.
You know, you do something different because I was cook. And then when you're a certain level of cook, you got rations. And then the number 2 cook, he would get whiskey, but he couldn't drink anymore because he wasn't allowed to drink anymore. And so they'd hand down the rations to the next guy. So now I've had a couple of beers in, and what are you gonna do? Let's go out drinking because we already got a couple in, and that was my life too. So when you change your environment, it's great. Like when I was younger, my 20s, 28 something, you know, I traveled all through here and camped all through, and I'm like, yeah, to your point, but I just gave it a timeline because I had things to accomplish. I needed to get my resume up so I can make these moves, and I was able to make a move where they paid me to move, and I'm like, yay, you know. So I had this all, you know, like you, and just wanted to be in the environment. And there are so many studies you can read that saying communing with nature just changes everything for you, right? And so you're right, you can be in the cities for their benefits, but you also become that city. It probably took me 2 years to decompress from my hard city life.
I would agree.
Yeah. I mean, I had all my suits were handmade, all that stuff in the shop and all that stuff. You had to be this thing.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. So one of the things I like to tell people is, I mean, I was so out of place when I got here.
Good word.
And so, you know, this happened several times, and I was like, what the fuck? No way. So, you know, you go to a dinner party and you meet a bunch of people you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
In a big city, the question is, so what do you do?
Yeah. And who do you know? And
you tell them what you do for work.
Mm-hmm.
In Bozeman, when somebody says, what do you do? They're not talking about work.
I hike a lot.
Yeah, I ski, I snowboard, I mountain bike, I run, I hunt or whatever. And so like, I was like, what? Hold on. That you can have a different response?
Yeah, it's allowed.
Like,
back to our social
and so it's like,
engineering.
nobody gives a fuck about what you do for work,
no,
you know?
Yeah. Because you got a job to pay bills. We get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was like, okay. And so I was like, whoa, that's super refreshing. So yeah.
Did you feel your brain flipping into something different? I feel my brain really relaxed.
Yeah. And it was, I would say it was scary in the beginning to make that change.
Uncomfortable, breaking through the fence of fear of change.
Yeah. Yeah. Because my identity was tied to my career. And so anyway, that was just an interesting change.
Well, you stepped out. I said, why'd you move here? So why'd you move here? Your turn.
Oh, why did I move here? You know, I was thinking too, what my girlfriend says, you've met her. She says she likes to ask people, how do you spend your time? Not what do you do?
I love that. That's great. I'll steal that from her. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really just intuitive, very intuitive. My sister went to school here. I'd been out here like 15 years prior, and I felt it then. I'd been saying since I was 18 or 19, I'm going to move to Montana. Yeah. And then
for some reason, yours is quieter.
He's soft-spoken.
Is that better?
It's better, yeah.
Hey. Okay. Yeah, and I like the area. Like there's something in an intuitive feeling, the people, the environment, all the above. Yeah,
people aren't always necessarily available to read the incoming data, right? We all receive inputs, and then we integrate it with what's in our head, and we overlay our social construct and things, right? And so then it just gets convoluted. You have to learn to be able to let go and say, what am I seeing? Like I said earlier, come in one ear, one eye, whatever, out the other, just let it go. But when you are paying attention to it, when your guts, I was probably 30 or 29 or 30. I was climbing, we were out here to climb Granite Peak, me and 2 other guys. And I remember when we came out, I think we ate at the Western. I couldn't, they go, oh, these people are really nice. And then we ate at Montana, where it just opened. It was like maybe open a year. And I'm like, this place is cool. I remember that. And I'm like, there's Lake Newby here. This is awesome. And my buddy had even bought land out here prior to that. So I'm like, so the weird part is being here on Wildlife Federation. I came up and we were looking where the wolves were put in. I came up on a mission from Colorado to do this stuff. And I'm like taking pictures, and it hit me. I'm like, I've been here before. You know what I mean? And because like I said, I've camped all through to figure this out, and it just kind of worked, and it vibed. Same thing for me.
Yeah. When people ask me that exact question, I remember feeling almost embarrassed to answer it. Say, Oh, I moved here because it
felt good.
Because it felt right. Like, what'd you move here for? Love?
Yeah.
The feeling?
Yeah.
I had no,
Yeah,
I had no
yeah.
direct way to answer that question because I'd never really.
And what's a better answer?
It resonated. Yeah, right. Well, people,
Like what?
Yeah.
Like literally, what would be a better answer than it felt right?
Yeah, and people look at you. Oh, you have to have logic, right? No. I can just. That is my logic. I mean, people. Your subconscious is your real rule. If you can just learn how to access that better.
Yeah.
It was, because I had the opposite of logic. I was offered a really good promotion where I was working in Washington, and I turned down the promotion, quit, and moved here.
Yeah. Well, they were giving me mine too. I'm like, I'm out. You got to go with where your heart is. Otherwise, you'll resent it and hate it and struggle through. And you'll do that because it made sense. And part of you will be gone.
Yeah, I was living in Washington. My sister and brother-in-law they got married here because they both went to school here. And I said to them then, and I was joking, but I wasn't. I said, if I go back to Bozeman one more time, I'm going to move there. We came here for the week of the wedding. I spent the week here, and that was when I put my notice in.
Sold your stuff.
When I went back. Yeah. It was like 8 weeks later, I moved back here after the wedding.
So do people search for things or do things find them?
It's a great question. Yeah.
Do you subconsciously search? Do you consciously search? I had a plan. You guys, it sounds like some, magical wand touched you.
Yeah, maybe it's you consciously search and it subconsciously finds you.
Well, so let's dive into your plan. Right. So I guess what I would ask is like, if you were to go back again, would you have moved to Montana 20, 30 years earlier? Right. So like,
yeah, well, no, because it would conflict with my structure in my head.
But that's your structure in your head.
And I had a
goal.
goal.
Could you have changed your structure in your head to allow you to do other things?
Fantastic question. Yeah. So everyone asks the question, what would you do differently? Oh, nothing. Because then that would make me me. Whatever. That's bullshit. Bottom line is.
Thank you. Because I was going to tell you that.
Yeah. Because it's like, what input do you have? Remember, as we all know, we grew up at a certain thing. You had your structure with your construction. You had your structure on your farm. You had your thing, and I had a structure at the time that the confines that I believed was right because it was validated with the structure.
Yep.
But
you had positive feedback. To be like, hey, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Great
You're
statement.
Like, I'm getting feedback to stay in DC, so I'm going to stay.
Yeah, and the only reason why I stayed as long as I did, because I could have left earlier, it was my mom. Right. So she lost her husband, and in those cultural spans is very rigid. Like she would never be with another guy. It's just not possible. She's still married to my dad, right? It's just what it is. So when she still had the home, I didn't want to be too far away. I mean, I would drive up on top of all my other things in DC and drive up every month to visit with her, right? Because my sister had moved away, and so it was just her. So I was closest 4 hours. I was closest. My sister was 7 hours, 12 hours, and my brother was 7. So I had to stay, and when in 2016, when I was sitting on Everest, now you get some emails and stuff. You can buy a little card, whatever, and you can get some. And I got an email from this guy who wanted to buy a place. I'm like, fuck yeah! I just looked like go because I knew once
you're sitting on the top of Everest. And you got
just
an email?
At base camp, 18,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
What the fuck, man?
Yeah, no, they had these.
Get your shit together, man.
No kidding.
I'm joking.
No. Thank you for saying a little sidebar onto that. In 2008, when we were there, it's when the Olympics were in China and they wouldn't let people up to the summit. We had the military was on our mountain. We had a sat phone, and I would call my girlfriend every now and then. And there was literally military in a camp listening to your thing. And if you went up to the higher camp, they had rifles. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere. So my whole climbing career has been completely in the dark. You go away, there was zero. You just zero. And no news is good news is what we said.
Yeah.
But 16 is different. So at this point, I'm seeing this, and now that my mom could sell the house, I'm negotiating this as much as I can from the mountain. You get it every now. You get like 5 minutes of airtime.
Yep.
And then, another 4 days later, another 5, so I'm just trying to negotiate this. It took a year to sell, and I just wanted her to be safe.
Mm-hmm,
and so she was able to move when we sold, moved in with my sister. And I'm like, the minute she was sold, moved in, I'm like, plan, engage.
Yep.
And so I pushed everything else and made my thing happen. Because I still have a responsibility to my mom. I
Yep.
do. I have that kind of, that's who I am. And so that was good enough. Had it happened 5 years earlier, I would have been here 5 years earlier.
I got you. Yeah.
So, and it would have been better, but better from, there's nothing wrong with it. I just would have had 5 more years of it. Right. And then I would have had, because I'm an asset kind of guy, buying the properties at different prices and all that stuff. And it would have been different financially too. It's still not bad, but it just would have been better. So all that stuff would have been awesome.
It's probably still pretty awesome.
Yeah. No, I wake up every day going, fuck yeah. I mean, just, I really do now. Had to get through a lot of stuff, as everybody does.
You said you met your wife on Everest?
Yeah. So it's in 2008. She was in the same climbing unit. There were 20 of us. She was married at the time. And so she had her own climbing guide and I had a Sherpa guide. So we were just, and then the cliff noted version of all this. So after we all left, half summited, half didn't. The next year, our buddy Scott was finishing the 50, whatever, however many 14ers there are. I forget what it is. But he had been there as an ER doc back in the day and he'd climbed most of them, but he had like 4 left. So we all went and I went and Nikki was there. And so we were hanging out. Scott will always tell you, oh, I caused that to happen. All right, whatever. But yeah, we capped off all the 14ers. And amazing people. Scott's, he's an astronaut, been to space 5 times, an astronaut Hall of Fame, and he just does things, so we all as a group are still kind of connected because that's a, life and death situation kind of stuff. But yeah, so I met her and then we were visiting, didn't do anything. Right. So I was about to go to Aconcagua. It's like later that year, my buddy Mike, he calls me, he says, dude, doctor said I got some kind of hole in my heart. I can't go. Right. I got some problem. And I tell Nikki this because we had communicated like my other friends. She's sitting there. I could hear her. And her husband's there too. She goes, hey, Bob's down a climbing a partner. Can you care if I go? Yeah, go ahead. So next thing you know, Nikki and I are in Aconcagua together, climbing in the tent.
21
whatever.
And change. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the highest outside of Himalayas, and it punches you in the head like nobody's business. It's a rough mountain. Aconcagua was the Stone Sentinel. That's what it's called. And it's that way for a reason. I got stories on that one too yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I interrupted you. Nick, go back to Nikki.
Yeah, that's right. Woo. Good save. Yeah. So we climbed great and then talked a little bit more and understood interest. She was in this down spiral with her relationship. It had been a number of years, just been flat. And I said, okay, hey, look, if you guys separate, you have your own time to get your head right. We can hang out. She was living in New Mexico, Taos, New Mexico at the time. And so she went and stayed at Ouray for a while in Colorado just to get her things right and decided. Then they had a decision and it was mutual. They're like, yeah, no, we've been kind of, and my wife's tremendous because she's lived all over the world. She's lived in Africa, China, Azerbaijan, Indonesia. So because her husband was an oil person. So has all this thing. She grew up in the English Channel and the Isle of Jersey. So she's just different perspective about not Americanized perspective, just more international. So that's why we get along so well. I always tell people, I go, well, there was the Yak or Nikki. I mean, seriously, the Yak could carry my shit, but she's pretty nice. So we end up, and she was going to get, she hadn't been working for 20 years because she can't in the other country. She couldn't get a, green card for that. So she decided to go back to school, and it was at American University in DC where I was. So she moved and she lived in her own apartment, and then we got to know each other. And I tell people, I was married before, right? And, it seems right at the time. And then you meet people, you get to know them, and you think it's great for long term. But I go, think about it. My wife and I met climbing Everest doing stuff. It's hard. So before, girlfriends, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Antarctica. What do you mean? Well, going to Antarctica. That's not what I mean. It's what I said. So they didn't like that I was away, non-communicative, away doing things. Nikki's like, yeah, let me get my bag together. Right. Mm-hmm. So I have someone who does the things that are the hardest things. And she kind of laughs when I tell the story now, but when you're with a person like this, we were at 20,000 feet and your gut falls apart. So diarrhea happens every now and then. Right. So I'm holding a Ziploc bag of diarrhea for her in the tent, so it's like, you now have this thing, you're like, yeah, whatever, nothing matters. So we can talk openly call each other out on our stuff.
There's nothing to hide from.
There's nothing, and we're going to say it because you have, once you break through all that stuff, you're like, our relationship's freaking awesome. So that is where you want to be with someone who can carry the load just as hard. And, I said, "Oh, we did pretty decent this week for working out." She goes, "No, we missed another day. I don't like it." Okay, great. Awesome. You just got to have that. Otherwise, you can't be as strong a person as you can when your relationship partner doesn't have the same strength. And go back to how you guys were first starting the podcast. I don't know. I was the same way starting the dojo. I had looked at some things and I just don't want to fail. I don't know what to do. She goes, "You need to go do this." All right. I did it. And then because of that, she was there to support and, showed her how to use a nail gun. She's helped me build the floor and stuff like that. So she's just all in. So I think you got to have some relationship. So if you work all day, you do your thing, you got to come home and talk about it with somebody if you have some stress. If you don't have that to at least hear and let it out, you'll bottle that stuff up like I used to and take it to my next day. And that was a big thing I learned too about relationships. Without a good connection that you can rely on support, you won't be as good as you can be. So find it. But
when did you guys get married?
2013.
Cool.
So it was 2008. We met in 2013. Yeah. That's the same year I started my studio too. So it all worked out. Really
when did she move to DC?
2012, I think. Yeah. 2012 or late 11. Yeah. 12.
Cool.
Yeah. I could imagine when you go through something like that together, like the bond that you have and that connection is.
Yeah.
And you guys keep doing it.
Yeah, we took.
It's like not like you just did
break.
it. You did it once, and then you're like, "All right, we're done." You're like, you guys keep. Doing these things.
We went to Russia, Aconcagua. We went to then we went to Denali, and that was hard because we also had I've sat there and cried. It's because it just the overwhelmingness that comes on it because you are at zero. And you just completely, you don't have a social filter. You don't have a control mechanism. You're fucking done. You just say what it is. So that's why she's seen all that. And I've seen all hers. No, not as much. She's now broken down a lot more. She's held a lot in, but no, she told me that she's gotten better.
Yeah. That some of my friends that I've trained at the MMA gym with, like you have a connection with them just from going through that hard shit together.
Absolutely.
It's a friendship that I don't know, it's hard to describe, but there's just a kinship there that's not because you've seen each other suffer and be kind of at death's door in a sense.
Yeah, you could. In my Shihan is the name of that's what they're called, and Shihan would always say, "Wow, Sensei Bob always makes him do more," and that's the way he talks, right? And some of my students, I'm like, "No, you're going to do everything from very basic and every test. Like it's a 5-hour test with me to get your next belt level." And they go, and it's just a moniker. And then you go and you push to such levels and you get hurt and you have these things and you can connect it in a way that only the group can decide.
Yeah.
And then, and you feel this, there's a different power in everything you do. It's probably similar to someone who plays basketball on Saturday night. You can get the same effect. But I tell everyone, get that effect because it just is something, right? Something inside you. You feel it. You don't know what it is.
Yeah.
The minute you press the doors of the dojo, you're this different energy. But you can take that to your day work and everything else, right? You know how to turn it on and off now.
Yeah, like martial arts is what I can speak to, but I know it's kind of across the board with different sports. So you always see guys kind of hugging after. Like guys will fight and they hug after, or guys in sports.
We always did.
You just have that.
Yeah,
that bond after where you're like, I feel that, man. We went through that together. And it's
one of my favorite ones. Woody, he was a boxing champ in the Army. He was in the Army too. He was like #1 boxer, and he was in jiu-jitsu with us and karate. My first punched me so hard, like I couldn't breathe for days. And I'm like, dude, that was awesome. We're just all pumped about that. I mean, it's a guy thing maybe, but at the same time, you're like, you get it. And that's, we definitely, as you know, we all bow at the end of it and bow at the beginning. For us, it's the more traditional, probably no different. I haven't been in your gym, but it's just a respect, period. And you're pushing each other, you're helping each other push each other to the limit. And I think that is in the studio, on the mountain, at home, at work, at anything you just want to achieve together as a group. And then you yourself feel this another level of you that you can do more. But do you want to do more? That's the question. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, I mean, in some sense, you and your wife probably have that same connection just because the climbs you did.
And the switch has flipped again because she's had these losses. Her dad died a couple of years ago and her mom just passed. So now she doesn't have all those, like my mom moved and said, we're safe. Great. So now that's why she's sending me, hey, you want to go climbing here? Okay.
She's ready to go.
Yeah, she's ready to go. And I'm going, okay, so we've got to increase our, our distance. We got to, all those things that your guy at 60 said, you mentioned to him, we can do. I can't, just my recovery time is different, but it's redialed because I've got my health thing different than instead of back in the day when, noodles were a thing, but not, and I recover so much better now. And the cold tub and the infrared sauna that I have, and I've dialed this all in, and I feel amazing. So so don't ever quit, because that's a part of you that's gone. So I'm afraid if I ever slow down, I'm afraid of that. And maybe that's part of what it is. Yeah.
Do you know who Don Wildman is?
No.
He was the founder of Bally's Total Fitness.
Oh, okay.
And he like
I was a Bally's member years ago.
He was like I think he went heli skiing the year before he died, and he died in his like late 80s, early 90s. And he's going to these crazy gnarly places. He wasn't a skier, he was a snowboarder. And I don't know, you don't see very many 80-year-old men, or women, snowboarding out of a helicopter.
No.
It's freaking awesome.
That's not on the list of things for most people.
Right.
Well, that's it. And that's why my martial arts, to your point, I mean, I was in Japan training. This guy was 80 something. There's 100 of us in this beautiful dojo with this huge taiko drum in us. And we were just training. And it's just an honor to be around people like that. Right. So I came back from Everest, and I had moved, and I hadn't had a good studio that I've been around, and I went to these guys that did weapons. I'm like, yeah, I've done weapons, but let me just go. And so I'm doing this Joe staff with these guys, and they go, hey, you want to go to Japan? I'm like, sure. So I go to Japan, and I'm training with this guy, and this room full of people, and I'm just like, my training style is, always zeroed in, 100% focused. I'm there all the time. Some people come into the studio and like kind of do stuff, right? But there's people that just like me, just all in. And I remember I'm doing something, and I don't speak Japanese. He's coming at me at 80 years old with a sword with the intent of cutting my head off. I'm just like, and I have to defend and fight. And he's just teaching me. I'm just sitting there going, yeah, you're going to see me on the tatami in my 80s for sure. That's why I have to open the studio, because I have to keep doing this stuff to the day I die. And another guy, this is Di Pasquale. This guy was out of New Jersey. He was one of the highest ranking jiu-jitsuans, and his son was a 9th dan too. And I'm a 6th dan, and you can only get one more. The dan means the level of black belt on it. So you can only get one more level. It goes up to 8 levels technically in jiu-jitsu, but 7 is technique. And then 8 is just how you are with people and how you can really connect energy beyond things. Anyways, his dad was an amazing guy, but he walked with a cane. He walked to the cane, come to the edge of the tatami, the mat, hand his cane to his son, and step on and just glide. His power and his intensity was all connected to being on the mat. He had to walk with a cane outside of it when he got just like floated. I'm like, fuck, this is crazy. And I met this other guy, Nishu Ishu was his name. He was first out of Korea. Back in Korean war times, that you weren't allowed to teach Americans martial arts. They weren't allowed. He was the first one allowed to teach weapons. And so he taught bow staff. And I remember drove to Ohio to do this. And we get in there, and I'm tired from all my 3 jobs. And there's like 40 of us in this huge circle, and this Japanese man and this woman walking 10 feet behind per the regular thing out there. And he's just this old timer doing fingertip push-ups, just like this. Just nuts. And I'm just going, boy, if I harden myself to this thing, the power and energy I can have for the rest of my life, is amazing, and I could be alive every day. Hence why I want to get back to the studio so that and I will always teach, because it keeps you alive. You got to have something to keep you alive.
Do you know who Peter Attia is?
Oh yeah, I've read his books. And yeah.
His quote or saying I always remember is, people don't get old and stop moving. They stop moving and get old.
100%.
Yeah.
I've reincorporated jumping back into my routines and stuff like that. And if I do go back into doing more of my katas and stuff, there's real good exertion and jumping and movement. And I can sense it just at 58, as it took a bit, right? Because since I had this gap in time where I really wasn't training hard, and I've said this saying many times, it's easier to stay in shape than to get in shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you got to keep doing shit, and you got to just add a little bit. Don't over add, because then you break shit. That's really what I've learned.
So I get nervous when we're talking about retiring. I get nervous when older people are retiring and not doing anything. I'm like, come on, man, you got to give your body a reason to live.
That was my mother-in-law. She didn't do anything, and she didn't exert, a couple of falls and not take her. Meanwhile, my 99-year-plus mom, who's in independent living still, oh yeah, I got this going on. She just goes to things in the building and just keeps doing it. And she said to me point blank, I can't stop her. I'll just die. That's literally her statement. And she knows it.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Bob, I know you because you do the SCORE mentoring, and everything you've done is helping people. It's kind of everything you spoke to. Is there anything anyone who could be listening to this could do to help you out here with your martial art ventures or anything?
Yeah, there's I appreciate any help from anything, because every idea is great, every comment is great. Yeah, when I get the studio up, just tell people about it, come and try it. I mean, it has to resonate with people, but that's the next thing I want to do. And I got a couple nonprofits that I'm running. Montana Guys Who Give. I created a nonprofit where we help people. So
what's that called?
Montana Guys Who Give. Drink beer, eat meat, make friends. So
all right.
You put $100 in a hat, and then we vote on where we're going to give money to. We've done it for the last couple of years.
Okay. And
that's a great thing. You just go online and sign up for the sheet, and it doesn't cost anything. You put the $100 in. When we go eat meat, I'll figure out how much it costs, and you put in $20, so you get $125 into it. And then we go to the nonprofit and we give them a check, and they love us. And the point is, mailing a check to somebody is not as effective so I just do it in the Valley. It's only for the Valley. You get to meet the person, and they go, we didn't know about you guys. Well, we didn't know about you. And I have people now, they discovered about these nonprofits, like TinWorks is a company we just gave to last. They do art, and they help kids with art. And we gave them $1,700 because there were 17 of us that pitched in, and they're like, this is the greatest thing ever. So people don't get that. And nonprofits don't have money to pay for operational expenses. People give money, says, do this for me and put my name on it. I'm like, no, here, they've got light bills. I don't care what you do with this money. Don't tell me, just take it. And they're like, love
do whatever you want with it.
Yeah. And I'm starting another nonprofit for the Gallatin County Sheriff's Foundation, because I was on the DC Police Foundation. So I've just got that off the ground. So that's another thing. So when anyone sees that, talk about that. And then, Samurai Training. I put a webpage up a while ago. So I just now you guys got to kick my ass and say, go get the lease space, and then I'll go do it. And then we'll get a bunch of your listeners to come and just have a free fight night. What do you say?
Yeah, that sounds fun. Yeah, I know you.
Just all out brawl.
If I say fight night, he's like, yeah, I'm in. What time?
I know you looked at one place. That's what I was going to ask you, if you had any leads on the spot yet or not.
Well, so I drove around another community. I just talked to some people about location, and that one lease space that you and I talked about out yonder seems the most, but I just got to figure out the build out cost, because the build out cost is just going to be pretty absorbent. So that's just it. Do I start smaller and put it in? But my mind says, build it right first time, just go. And that's where my head is. I don't want to, if you start small, you think small, you end small. You start big, you go big, you take the risk at 58, and I don't give a care, because my goal is to provide. And if I could do that, I can do anything. So so Samurai Training, because again, he's from the Samurai clan, and it's very traditional. It's handed down from the 7th century, and it's very unique. And I always say, teach you how to be a martial artist, you might learn how to fight. And that's the mantra to that. Thanks for that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You guys rock.
Want to end right here?
You're in charge. This is your joint.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Cool. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. This
Thanks,
is
sir.
awesome.
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. Thanks, man. Let's fight.